You're now ready to go. Great, thank you. Welcome to the 14th of September 2020 Central Coast Council Ordinary Meeting. Due to the rapidly evolving events in ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, it is agreed for everyone's safety to conduct tonight's meeting remotely. I remind our viewers that we are still bound by the public health order that currently restricts large gatherings in confined spaces and requirements in physical distancing. Council have a responsibility to ensure that everybody is safe, including our community, councillors and staff. The situation is evolving and we will continue to monitor in consultation with our staff and councillors. Our priority is the safety of our community, staff and councillors. It is with that in mind that we monitor the circumstances week to week and consider all the factors. For these reasons, please ensure that you remain up to date and look at both the state and federal government websites for information. For anything to do with council, please have a look at our website and our website will keep you up to date. Being COVID safe is everybody's responsibility. Please play your part by ensuring you practice physical distancing, good hand hygiene, and stay at home if you are sick. Avoid crowded spaces that would limit you to being able to be physically distanced from yourselves from others. If you're in a crowded space, for example, in public transport, please take precautions and wear a mask. On an entirely separate note, I was pleased to announce today that Central Coast Council has commenced the 2021 dredging program for the Entrance Channel. Dredging the Entrance Channel is important for our community, and to see this program underway is encouraging. I want to thank all the government agencies involved. Through working together, Council has been able to get the dredging program underway. I thank everybody involved. I will now hand over to the CEO, Mr. Murphy, to run through some specifics of tonight's meeting. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight's Ordinary Council meeting will be conducted remotely, and this is in accordance with the amendment to the Local Government Act 1993, Section 747A, COVID-19 Pandemic Special Provisions Clause 1A1. This amendment commenced on the 25th of March 2020 and has been put in place for a period of 6 months, but can be extended to a period of 12 months to ensure the safety of the councillors, staff and the public. Councillors, you're still required to adhere to the relevant policies and procedures, including the Code of Meeting Practice and Code of Conduct. I note that councillors have been provided guidelines on how the ordinary meeting will be conducted tonight, but for those attending via webcast, I'd like to advise the following. Councillors will be required to move or second an item by way of showing of hand, indicate they wish to speak on any item by showing of hand. Once identified, the councillor will have 3 minutes to speak when the Mayor calls on them. Ask questions by showing of hand, and if required, the relevant executive leadership team member will become visible for the question to be asked or responded to. I note that questions are required to be put succinctly and without debate. For any other items, showing of hand is required. Remain visible during the meeting. If they are no longer visible, they will have been determined to have left the room. Voting will be conducted by a show of hands, and the Mayor will call off the names for and against. Councillors are asked to keep their hand visibly raised for the vote. Those councillors or staff who have pecuniary interest on items will be removed from the webcast during discussion and returned once completed. If there are any technical issues during the meeting, the Mayor will be advised accordingly and provide those in attendance an update. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I remind councillors and staff that this meeting is being recorded and webcast, so please be mindful of what you say. Please make sure that you turn your electronic devices to silent and ensure that you are free from any interruptions, as it will make it hard to hear what is going on. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Dark and Young people, on which we meet today, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Councillors, I note that both Councillor Pillen and Councillor Best are apologies for the meeting. I also note that Councillor Vincent is still at work and he will join us at approximately 7 p.m. tonight. Councillors, are there any further requests for leaves of absence for any future meetings? No hands, thank you. Do I have a mover? And a seconder, please, for the apologies. Councillor Smith, second Councillor Holstein. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Greenaway is not on screen, so therefore, oh, she's there. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 1.1, which is disclosure of interest. Any of the councillors, sorry, if you disclose, please raise your hand and keep it up while I note. So we have Councillor Hogan, Councillor Holstein, and Councillor Smith. Okay, so Councillor Hogan, would you like to declare your interest, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I declare on item 2.8 Community Support Grant Program, less than significant non-pecuniary, as I know some of the grant recipients, and also on item 3.5, Working Together, Staying Strong COVID Grants. I declare a pecuniary interest on that because I work with or have partnerships with those organisations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hogan. Councillor Holstein.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I make a significant non-pecuniary interest on notice of motion 5.3. As my eldest daughter is employed by the Mariners, I will not participate in any of the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Holstein. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll declare a non-pecuniary less than significant interest in item 2.7, the exhibition of the draft waste strategy. One of the speakers in public forum, Ms. Riley, I know her through my workplace as an educator. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillors, just to be sure, there are no further declarations. No, thank you. Do I have a mover to accept the disclosure of interest? Councillor Hogan, seconded by Councillor Burke. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, I'll now move to item 1.2, confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. And that was the meeting held on August 24. Do I have a mover? Councillor Gale, seconded by Councillor Sundstrom. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, it's the notice of intention to deal with matters in closed session, but I do note that we do not have any items to be dealt with in closed session. So therefore, do I have a mover of the motion that is on the screen? Meeting staff, could you just bring the page up, please? Right at the bottom. Anyway, do I have a mover for that? Councillor McLaughlin, second by Councillor McGregor. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we're having some issues with the meeting screen, so we'll just keep going through, and I'm sure meeting staff will be able to fix that as we go. Councillors, I'll now be moving to the items by exception. As we know that it's a procedural motion to deal with items by the exception method. It's where some of the business items are resolved as a group en masse in accordance with the recommendation in the paper. So we already have some starred items. So what I'm going to do, here we go. Looks like we've got some movement at the station. Thank you. I'm going to call out all the items that have been starred for debate. I'll start with item 2.3 in the name of Councillor Sundstrom. 2.4, Councillor Smith. 2.7, Councillor Smith. 5.1, Councillor Gale. 5.2, Councillor McLaughlin. 5.3, Councillor McLaughlin. 5.4, Councillor McGregor. 5.6, Councillor McLaughlin and Marquette. And that would be them all. Councillor Gale, are you putting up your hand to move it, are you? Or have you got a question? You got a question? Okay, I'll just, yep. Do you want to ask your question?
Madam Mayor, I've just unmuted myself. Has that worked?
Yes, that's working,
Okay.
yes.
Can I please bring 5.5 across for debate, please? That's Kincumber
Oh, okay.
Waste.
So yeah, I was about to run through and add. So you'll want to add 5.5, Councillor Gale.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there? Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm just reading the chat button. Are there any further items that anybody wants to bring forward? I see no hands. Silence is great. Silence is golden. Therefore, councillors, I will take a motion from the floor to move the adoption of the by exception, Councillor Holstein, second by Councillor Hogan. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Okay, councillors, we'll then move on to item 2.3 in the name of Councillor Sundstrom. Councillor Sundstrom, do you have an amendment? That's it?
Yes, I do. It's been sent through to staff.
Yep, I can see it up there. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Sundstrom's motion or recommended? Councillor Smith, thank you. Councillor Sundstrom.
Thank you. I won't spend too much time on this. Member of the community, Ms. Joy Cooper, spoke to this matter very well during the public forum, and she raises some good points about how we need to address the relationship between those that would lobby council and those that work for council. This proposed policy that might come forward out of this amendment will protect the community and will protect the staff as well, and it will add a layer of transparency that certainly needs to be there. I ask my councillor colleagues here tonight to support the amendment in this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sundstrom. Councillor Smith, the second of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rather than speak to it, I might just ask Councillor Sundstrom, if I could, if it was possible just to perhaps consider some wording changes. Could I just ask, where it says that a further report be provided to council regarding a potential lobbying policy, I take it from your comments, Councillor Sundstrom, that we actually want a draft policy, not the potential for a lobbying policy. Is that?
I expect that a policy will come out of this. In fact, that's not the latest version of what I sent through to staff. But go on, I'll clarify that directly.
Okay, and the other just comment, could we just note that it also include staff interactions with developers through planning matters? And the reason I raised that, councillors, is I just noticed with the changes to the local planning panel that the minister announced probably a month ago, it now allows developers to meet with staff during the consideration, my understanding, if I've got this correct, during the consideration of a matter, and there are various concerns regarding that process. So I wonder if we could include not just lobbying per se, but interactions with developers and lobby groups, such as the UDIA, for example.
Yes, certainly I'll be happy with that. I thought it reflected that anyway, but yeah, in the interest of clarity, I'm happy for it to be included. And
thank you.
The matter that I raised briefly, the latest version I sent through to staff included a few words at the beginning of point 3, and they were along the lines of with a view to inclusion in the code of conduct, Central Council Code of Conduct, that a further report be provided. And a staff hearing, they've got the cursor up there.
I think they're having some challenges with it, Councillor Sundstrom.
I understand.
Yeah.
We're living in challenging times.
That we are.
with a view to inclusion in yes, so happy to have that go up.
Okay, Councillor Gale, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question's just through to the author of the staff recommendation, if I may. So that will take it to James Taylor or Kathy Bragg. Do we have either of them available?
No, you have Shane Sullivan.
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, to Ms. Sullivan, please. Can I get some clarification from you, Ms. Sullivan, with regards to the impact of this particular point 3 here on our operational team?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the preparation of a policy is probably not a significant resource impact. I mean, there will be some time and consultation required, but I would comment that the provision that it be with a view to inclusion in the Code of Conduct may be challenging. I think that perhaps, without wanting to preempt what might come through, it may be more that there'd be a reference or a cross-reference to any potential lobbying policy. But there are fairly standard, other councils have lobbying policies, and so that would be our starting point.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add, I'd be happy for Ms. Sullivan to offer some wording that reflects what I was trying to achieve, and that is that it would be cross-referenced through the. I wasn't expecting the whole policy to become part of the Code of Conduct. Just wanted to be tied in together.
Well, perhaps it could be with a view to aligning to the Code of Conduct, that a further report be provided, to Council regarding potential lobbying policy. If Council were to resolve that way, my understanding would be that I would provide, staff would provide a draft report on lobbying in accordance with those that have been prepared in response to the ICAC guidelines.
And that would mean, using the word aligning would mean that the Code of Conduct would reference the policy or any potential policy?
Without wanting to predetermine an outcome, yes, I think it would.
Okay. In that case, I'll accept that as well.
Okay, Councillor Marquette. Sorry, I'll ask you to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just through you, a question to Councillor Sundstrom. If you can give me some comment. Point 3, he's got in brackets. The rest is pretty obvious what the intention is, but then he's got in brackets amongst other requirements. What are the other requirements? That sounds very broad to put into a motion. It could be anything.
Councillor Sundstrom.
I've worked with Ms. Sullivan on the wording here, and I imagine that that would just allow the research into a possible policy to be flexible, and if any information comes up or requirements come up, that they're not restricted, and that obviously any policy that or draft policy that comes forward will come back to the chamber for discussion. There's nothing to be scared of, Mr. Marquette.
Oh, I'm never scared, Mr. Sundstrom, never scared, mate.
Ms. Sullivan, did you want to answer that? Or further
through you,
comment?
Madam Mayor. No, Councillor Sundstrom's exactly right. I was kind of caught on the back foot, and that's a bit of wriggle room there to say beyond documenting, there may be other appropriate things for the policy to include.
No,
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan.
if you don't mind, Madam Mayor, I'll quickly just talk to it. I've actually got no problem with voting for it, but just a little note or a little bit of feedback. Once again, we could have had these conversations a couple of hours ago or an hour and a half ago in briefings, and we wouldn't have wasted 25 minutes of everyone's time. We could have spoke to staff then about how we do this, and we could have got the wording back then. I just don't know why we have briefings before the meeting when these changes and this wording that's obviously been, as Councillor Sundram just said, he spoke to staff about this obviously previously. I assume it wasn't in the last 5 minutes. Why didn't we bring this up in the briefings? Why didn't we all have this nutted down and have our head around it? Then we wouldn't have had 10 seconds to think about it before we had to vote for it. I'm actually happy to put my hand up for it, but just next time, let's just put it in the briefings that we all attend. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Marquette. Councillor Gale, you have a further question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor, if I may, to Director Cox. Is he online here?
He'll appear in a minute.
Thank you.
There he is.
Thank you, Director Cox. Look, I didn't know that number 3 was going to be added, and I'm, like Councillor Marquette said, looking at this on the hop and trying to make sure that I'm going to vote the right way. Now, from the outset, I can't see any real issues, but I'm just coming to you, Director Cox, through Madam Mayor, if I may, just to clarify that this doesn't put any real impingement on your planning team that are already under the pump with regards to excess paperwork that may be unnecessary. I'm just trying to make sure it's all above board and transparent. Does number 3 pose any real issues to your planning team?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Gale, actually it's probably an opportunity to get greater clarification because I mean, it's not just developers that lobby council staff.
Yep.
Someone anti a development will also lobby the council staff as well too. So I think it's a great opportunity for clarification in that space, and also too the development staff, and I also add the strategic planning staff as well too, but also to our community events. They're approached by developers as well too for to put on events and things like that, and for and funding provided. So I think it's a great opportunity to actually clarify those interactions, because the planning staff have tens of thousands of interactions with people with a DA all year round. So I think, it probably needs to clarify, what should be recorded and what shouldn't.
Thank you. So through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Cox. Director Cox, with the wording that we currently have on display at the moment in point 3, is that pinpointing the anti-lobbyers as well that are against different DAs? Have we got the right wording there that covers everything that you've just mentioned, or is there some wording change that you may recommend to cover both sides?
No, I'm probably happy with it, but I would hope that the policy in its derivation identifies a definition for lobbying and what it basically means, and I suppose that would give greater clarification.
Terrific. And given we've had this conversation, I think the intent's been made clear that we want both sides covered with this
Correct.
policy moving forward. Thank you, Director Cox. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. Are there any further questions? No. Councillor Sundstrom, right to reply.
Yeah, look, I'll be brief. I'm happy to accept all of the input that's been made. I appreciate the questions from Councillor Marquette and Councillor Gale, and I completely agree with Mr. Cox that when we talk about lobbying, it's for, those against, and those that are speculating, and that the staff would benefit from a clarification and some more policy they can fall back on when they need to. That's why I mentioned that this will go a long way towards protecting the community and protecting staff.
Thank you, Councillor Sundstrom. We'll therefore move the Motion by Councillor Sundstrom, second by Councillor Smith. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 2.4, the open pile burning policy. Councillor Smith, in your name.
Madam Mayor, I'll be speaking against it, so I won't be moving it.
You're not moving it. Do we have a mover? Councillor Holstein, I'm happy to second it. Councillor Holstein, you can open debate.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just going from one end of the computer to the other, try to unmute myself. Look, the report is fairly clear and concise. So I do and have had a conversation with Councillor Smith about some of her concerns, but I believe that this is a way forward. It is difficult for our riverine communities, those down along the Hawkesbury, Bar Point, Patonga Creek, Wanumbai, Little Wobby, all of those. So I support the efforts of the staff in coming up with this resolution. I know there are some questions on it and it's something that's going to have to be looked at, but I might leave my response to maybe address some of the issues that Councillor Smith then raises. But councillors, I believe this has been well needed and the staff have done a good report here that I think is worthy of our support and consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Holstein. I'd just like to concur that thank the staff for bringing the report to council. The river communities are certainly being active in this space, and I'm glad that we can bring a policy that will support what they need. They are certainly different and don't have the access to the same things that we do in most of our local government area. So I fully support the staff recommendation and urge my fellow councillors to do the same. Does anybody want to speak against the motion? Councillor Smith?
Madam Mayor, before I do, I was just going to ask the mover if he would consider, in my reading of the policy, it could benefit for some greater clarity. And I did talk to Mr. Martello earlier about just whether the provisions for the river communities could be included as a schedule as part of the policy rather than interwoven in the policy, because it does become a little bit confusing. I don't want to speak for Mr. Martello, but he seemed happy enough with that suggestion. So, Councillor Holstein, even though I am going to vote against it, would you consider that wording there just to provide greater clarity? So what it does is it puts those variations in a schedule with a map that makes it very clear that they only apply to those properties as specified.
Councillor Holstein.
Smith, I will seek, not that I don't believe you, Jane, but I will seek the council officer's comment, Mr. Martello, if you could clarify, are you satisfied that this is not an impediment in any way, shape or form to the implementation of the policy? Do you have any difficulties with it, and is the wording that is being suggested there by Councillor Smith acceptable to you, sir?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Holstein, the variation that's being proposed on screen, it doesn't change the intent of the policy, which is to offer a pragmatic approach to the riverine communities to managing risk from fuel load and vegetation on their properties. So council staff have considered those wording variations and are satisfied that there are no issues posed by it.
I accept them then, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm with you. I'm okay with that. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will now speak against it if I could. So, Madam Mayor, I will again state that I'm not opposed to pile burning. What I have concerns about is pile burning as self-assessment on environmental lands. And contrary to the views expressed, I am really disappointed with the report. I don't think it provides options or information regarding the green waste issues that were provided as the basis for this matter coming to council. It also doesn't highlight what the process is without self-assessment. We have many highly skilled staff. However, as a council, our organisation places little importance on environmental protection. Instead, we seem to want to vary the guidelines or work around the rules or take the quick and easy option or ignore the science when it gets in the way. So in this case, the New South Wales Scientific Committee listed removal of dead trees and dead wood as a key threatening process under the Threatened Species Act in 2003 and updated it in August 2017. That doesn't preclude pile burning, but it should be consideration in terms of this policy. I couldn't see it acknowledged anywhere in this report as a matter for consideration. The key threatening process includes burning on site, mulching on site, the removal of fallen branches and litter as general tidying up. The profile notes that dead wood and trees provide essential habitat for a wide variety of native animals and are important to the functioning of many ecosystems. This might be a small issue in the bigger picture, but like all of these issues, it is the cumulative impact through a lack of care and a lack of attention. In my view, the report should have considered options of how council can work with and support these landholders to address their concerns and achieve good natural resource management in the process. Instead, we're taking a hands-off approach that allows self-assessment for pile burns in areas identified as extreme bushfire risk. Again, not opposed to pile burning, but I am opposed to self-assessment on these lands, so I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. I believe I have a question here from Councillor Sundstrom.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you to, I imagine it might be Mr. Cox, I'm not sure, but and at the risk of delving into operational matters, with the schedule and the map that will be brought together as a result of this motion, would that information be relayed to the RFS and to Fire and Rescue New South Wales for their information and usage?
It's Mr. Martello, I believe.
Mr. Martello, okay, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. The Rural Fire Service have worked hand in hand with council staff to prepare this draft policy. So any variations and any mapping that is produced will definitely be shared with them.
And Fire and Rescue New South Wales being the agency that would take any emergency calls in relation to this?
We can certainly make sure that they have the information at hand as well, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sundstrom. Are there any further questions? Anybody wishing to also speak against? I've had 2 for. Okay, Councillor Holstein, write a reply.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I've got to take exception to Councillor Smith's comment that the staff have little interest in environmental protection. I think that'd be far from the case. Remember, what we're talking about here is not what is the responsibility of the RFS with hazard reduction and backburning. This is a 1 metre diameter ability to burn off that excess timber. What if they can't burn it off? They haven't got a green bin to put it in. They'll throw it back over into the bush, and they're adding, as Councillor Smith may well say, adding to dead wood and trees, contributing to the home of native fauna, but it also adds to the fuel loads. And it's the fuel loads and those pieces of timber that fall in and around these properties that are collected by the residents. It gives them an opportunity to do that reduction, remove that in a small wood pile, and if they do it. Yes, I have that concern that Councillor Smith say about self-assessment. And I have seen previously where there have been those individuals that have abused the ability of doing pile burning and have overstepped the mark. But I think our community will be well informed, well knowledgeable, because guess what? That provision may well be taken from them if it is abused. I expect the residents of the river community to act responsibly, to do the right thing. They are committed to protect their properties. They live in a beautiful area down there on the Hawkesbury and they want to look after it. But they need to be able to remove those pieces of timber that surround their house, that pieces of dead vegetation, and get rid of it. They can't wait for what might be a hazard reduction or a backburn, because guess what? It's not going to come because of the isolation of their community. The fact of having the pile burning policy, as reduced as it is, and done in consultation with the RFS, who are well aware of the concern, are protecting them in the long term. Councillors, this is a well thought out. It does have that opportunity and it will rely upon the residents to do the right thing, and I believe they can and they will, or they'll lose that right and that privilege to be able to do it. But we need to be able to allow people to protect themselves, and this policy will assist them in doing so. And for that reason, I ask the councillors to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Holstein. Councillors, I'll therefore move the motion by Councillor Holstein. Sorry, put the motion as moved by Councillor Holstein, seconded by myself. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Matthews, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Marquette, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Burt, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Gale. All those against? Councillor Smith and Councillor Greenway, I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we're moving on to item 2.7, the public exhibition of the draft water resource management strategy. In the name of Councillor Smith, are you wanting to move it, Councillor Smith? You've got an amendment.
Well, I've got an alternate motion, Madam Mayor,
Alternate
that
motion.
is up on the screen. So I will be moving that way, please. And it was circulated to all councillors earlier.
Do I have a seconder for Councillor Smith? Councillor Greenaway. Councillor Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I want to start by commending staff on the work that has gone into the drafting, the consultation and the finalisation of this strategy. You know, by and large, it's really high quality work. It provides lots of options and it's very focused on a circular economy and diverting waste from landfill, which is, I think, what we all want to see. But what I did want to note and what the alternate motion indicates is that it does resolve that council proceed with the investigation and the planning for a FOGO, a food organics and garden organics processing facility. So it was clear in the strategy and in the consultation that staff undertook that there was very strong support for going down the path of a FOGO. The strategy indicated that there is 59% of the curbside waste stream that is organic, including food and other organic material. And so if we can focus and proceed down that path, then there is a strong possibility of making a significant difference in the amount of waste that is going to landfill. So this motion is about you know, making or providing direction to staff that we do want to proceed down that path and we do want to get that planning and that implementation work done in the first 3 years. What it also does is really provide direction that we need to do that first before we consider any other alternate technologies. There are a range of issues or potential issues with other technologies. And I think it really is important that we implement the FOGO, implement the other strategies within the document, and then if needed, we do a proper investigation and proper consultation on those other strategies. So I commend the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Greenaway, seconder of the motion. Did you want to speak?
Deputy Mayor Smith did cover the information very well, so I don't have a lot to add other than I'd like to thank the speakers who came in and refer any of the community who is interested in what FOGO is or learning about a bit more about FOGO to have a look at some of the websites of other councils that have adopted it, and one of the closest ones to us is Lake Macquarie. It just will mean the community is a little bit more aware of what's involved and the benefits of it. Certainly, I know I probably won't be using it because I have chooks and a compost bin, and my red bin is next to empty every single week. So I do very much notice the amount of material that doesn't go in my bin. So for anyone who doesn't have a compost bin or chooks or any other way of utilising their organic waste, I think they'll be absolutely amazed at what they've been throwing away can now be used for something really beneficial. And as someone said earlier, there is no waste in nature. And I do remember travelling over to the Solomon Islands years ago, and there were so many things that were wonderful, and all the villages and everything, how they had a very sort of subsistence living, so there wasn't a lot of waste, but all the waste was what was brought in by the West, and it was tins and it was plastics and whatever else, but there was no infrastructure for waste pickups or anything like that. So they were so used to just throwing their rubbish. There was, because it was biodegradable and it was natural, and so they didn't have any other option but to throw it. And I'll never forget those images. So definitely
when you have a FOGO system and it utilises all that natural material the same way as generations of people have done for a long time, we'll just have a little bit of a industrial way of dealing with it, I guess, instead of just putting it straight on the ground. But certainly it's a valuable resource, and it is a crying shame to waste it. So I'm looking forward to see how we can progress this.
Thank you, Councillor Greenway. Councillor Gale, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question through you, if I may, through to Director Bolgoff. Firstly, thank you very much for all the hard work that you and your team have put into this particular strategy. Director Bolgoff, I can see the hours that have gone in. Look, I've got a quick question. 4B, up on the screen, number 4B, I applaud that we don't reduce the red bin service. However, my question is in relation to 4C, that any further detailed consideration of mixed waste processing and mechanical biological treatment be discontinued after the intended establishment and evaluation of FOGO. Director Bolgoff, sorry, does this support the intent of your waste strategy? And is there any economic impact that you'd like to share with us tonight before we vote on the amendment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gale. In relation to the proposal and what it actually does, it just highlights the focus and direction in relation to FOGO being very clear for the staff. In the first instance, it doesn't stop us looking at other alternatives at the back end in relation to energy from waste. However, it doesn't look at the opportunity to include that in the initial phase. So from my perspective, it certainly looks, it focuses early in the piece. Sorry, I'm just going back to your question. With allowing for space potentially down the track for energy from waste, but not the detailed technology in all the options for energy from waste. So what was the second part of your question? Sorry, Councillor Gale.
So I was just trying to make sure that 4C, the mechanical biological treatment and the mixed waste processing, if that was discontinued, that it wouldn't have a huge economic cost on our council, and that it is supportive of the intent of your waste strategy.
It's certainly supportive in relation to the strategy. The cost in relation to energy from waste can be quite significant. With FOGO, it is a tested method. Obviously, there's been some learnings from other councils in relation to the FOGO treatment. And I think there's around 43 councils that have some form of FOGO in the process. With the New South Wales government requirements, it is something that you need to do. You need to be able to get out as much as you can out of the waste stream as possible before you could go down energy from waste anyway. So it is supportive of the strategy in that sense.
Thank you.
And in relation to cost, as I mentioned, there's a lot of councils that are certainly doing the FOGO treatment in similar sort of costs that is being charged through Central Coast Domestic Waste Management Levy.
Okay, so this amendment is strictly supportive of your waste strategy. You'd be happy for the amendment to get up.
The only difference from what I've put up was it would have given council some comparisons in these spaces as we went through the process of comparing. As mentioned, there is this is a tested method in relation to FOGO with, as mentioned before, there's upwards of 43 councils that are using this methodology.
Okay, thank you, Director Bolgoff.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Gale. We've had 2 for, so I'm going to go, I've got an against. I know, Councillor Holstein, I did ask you were you against, but I'm going to go to the against, which is Councillor Marquette. And then I'll come back to you, Councillor Holstein.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I would like to speak against the alternate wording that we've got on the screen at the moment. I think once again we're all forgetting where we are at the moment. I mean, reach out left and right with your hands. You can't touch any of the other councillors because we're not even in the same room because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So in 1 to 3 years, we're going to rush through something which is a green tainted acronym. Beware the acronym that comes from the environmentalist FOGO. Sounds wonderful, sounds like it's going to do wonderful things, and it may, but what it's going to do, it's going to put A, a cost, and B, an impasse on the residents of the Central Coast. When across Australia, we're pushing 8% unemployment. God knows what the unemployment really is on the coast. God knows what the youth unemployment is on the coast. And I've had a look at today. I've taken a few hours today to have a look at other councils that have put this in, and there's some pretty horrendous feedback. There's some pretty significant costs as well. So straight up, there's one council there that was saying you have to have this bin. It's $85. The next council was $185. Plus you have to buy caddy liners for the whole year. They'll give you the first 3 months. After that, it's up to you. Now that mightn't sound like much money to you guys out there, but I'll tell you what, there's some people doing it pretty tough at the moment. Why do we need to rush this in as early as 12 months to 3 years? Why is it so desperate that unemployed people out there have got to have something else that comes out of their hip pocket? Let's do this slowly, like had been done in the comprehensive report. It was going to slowly be filtered out. There was many considerations there. What this is doing is putting something wham, bam, let's do this now in the middle of a pandemic. And it's not just that, guys. You read the councils that have put it in, there's been huge issues with smells. I mean, you can put, it says in here, you're supposed to put dog feces, cat feces, chicken skin, flesh in there. And obviously these things are rancid in the middle of summer. Well, what do you need to do? There's a long list. You have to keep your FOBO bin in the shade. That's great if it's possible. You can't overfill it, of course. You need to wrap all your food in paper towel. Well, that's great. Sounds like it's going to take a long time. You need to sprinkle everything with bicarb soda. You need to wash out your bin once a week with eucalyptus oil. Now, all these things are great for people that work part-time or people that are semi-retired or people that don't work at all. But they're not great for someone that's out looking for a job that's just lost theirs during a pandemic. They're not great for people that work 80 hours a week. They're an impasse on people that are already living a difficult life. We don't need to rush this through in 1 to 3 years. It's quite ridiculous. Let's go back to what we had. Let's go back to what the staff had worked on. And whilst there is a notation here in 4B, I think it is, that they're not going to take away red bins, I'm terrified of the wording. There's no intention. I remember reading a book in school and it was talking about how Germany had no intention of starting World War II. Then they invaded Poland. So I don't believe that there's no intention to cut the red bin pickup. I believe this will come in. Next thing you know, your bin will be only getting picked up every second week. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Marquette. Councillor Holstein?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the motion, and I thank Councillor Smith for some of the comments and the feedback that she's accepted in there in regards, and Councillor Marquette's concerns about World War II is going to restart, or there's some comparisons to it. I think I'm the only councillor here in the room that went through the process of taking us, my God, to 3 bins. And that was a major decision, and you should have heard the complaints and the problems that it was going to raise and the issues, and this was going to happen and the sky was going to fall. Well, guess what? Over the years, the councils here on the Central Coast have been to the forefront with its red, its yellow and its green bins. And you look at the facts within this report, and can I say, in my 30 years in local government, congratulations, Boris, it had been one of the best strategies I have seen. It is outstanding. It's very good. And I know that some people will want to say that there'll be an issue. All the things that Councillor Marquette talked about in smell and all that, well, if you're not putting it in the green recycling cum FOGO bin, then it's in your red bin, and the same thing exists and the same problem is that our red bin has something like 22% of recyclables in there. So we've still not got that down pat, but we're better than a lot of places. It's got nearly 60% of organics. Now, the ability to transfer that over to hopefully what will be the green bin, and whether the red and the green bin become different in regard to when they're collected. In other words, the organics into the green bin, and the green bin's collected every week and the red bin's collected every second week because we've kept that amount of contaminants down. And I know I heard the dirty nappy argument earlier today. Well, all of those things have got to be taken into consideration, but I think we're moving in the right direction. As I said, thanks, Councillor Smith. I don't want to reduce the numbers of the bins, and I don't want to have a fourth bin either. But I think we can do better. Education is going to be the one thing that I want to see coming with this, so people understand. If you've never seen the war on waste, and I know a couple of people have mentioned it, it's really, really exceptional to watch what we throw out. We are a disposable society. The amount of rubbish, the amount of excess food that we just eliminate, well, those organics could be going to better purpose. And I acknowledge that the FOGO is a way to go with that. I think that the staff will have the flexibility here. The director has said he's not too concerned that we're moving forward and we're heading in the right direction with this. It's an exceptional strategy. Councillors, we've got to be brave and move forward. If we look for problems, then we're not going to move forward. It might well change, not the number of bins, but the collection process and how that goes. But if you've got less rubbish in your red bin because you're putting more in the green bin, you'll need to have it collected more often. But I'm jumping ahead. These are all things that are going to have to be considered. These are all things that are going to have to go through the planning. Councillors, it's a good chance. I think it, as I said, one of the best strategies I've seen in my 30 years. I'd like to support it. I'd like you all to support it, and we move forward. We might have some hiccups, but we'll get there. Councillors?
Councillor Holstein, I believe Councillor McLaughlin, you've got some instructions there, an amendment, I mean.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering whether or not the mover would accept an amendment to 4B, something on the lines to say that instead of no intention to reduce the red bin service, that the red bin service will not be reduced as consideration of FOGO. Just put it in black and white that you're not going to reduce the red bin service as consideration of FOGO.
Councillor McLaughlin, I'm happy to include that wording if it gives you comfort.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest concern about. I agree with everything. I agree with
sorry,
what
if we can just get the wording again.
Instead of saying there is no intention, just to say
the red bin will not be reduced. Will not be reduced as part of the consideration
of FOGO. Yeah.
Happy with
that.
So
they just put it in there and be done with it.
Let me just check who seconded that for me.
That was Councillor
Greenaway. Are you happy with that?
Yep. Okay, great. Councillors, are there? Okay, so we've all agreed with that. There are no further questions. Nobody's speaking in opposition. Therefore, I will go to write a reply. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I do want to again reinforce appreciation to staff for the work that they put into this strategy. It was really comprehensive and it was well thought through. And I think what this motion does is just provide direction and focus as to where we want the staff to go in the short term and where we want to put some efforts. But I also want to thank the community. We have a very active and a very strong community that is deeply engaged in the issue of waste. And that's one of the reasons why we have such great efforts in our community in terms of recycling. We have community gardens, we've got organisations like Take 3 and Carry On. We've got people on the coast that were core to the campaign for container deposit legislation. And it was through their efforts that New South Wales now has container deposit legislation. So we have a very active and engaged community that is supportive of this strategy and supportive of FOGO. So I look forward to progress on that. I think that can make a significant difference in our waste management together with the other strategies that are in the policy. And so I think it's an exciting time to see our staff put this into place. The other thing I do just want to comment, and it's part of that motion, is also acknowledge the innovation that happens in our waste area in council. So again, I want to commend the staff on that. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I will now put the motion as moved by Councillor Smith, second by Councillor Greenaway. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Matthews, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Smith, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Gale, Councillor Greenway, Councillor Vincent. All those against? I have Councillor Marquette and Councillor Burke. I'll declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, moving on to item 5.1, the deferred item notice of motion committee costs, in the name of Councillor Gale. Are you moving the motion as is, Councillor Gale? No.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a small amendment that I've sent through to the staff earlier. We did discuss this back in briefings, I believe, for the 24th of August ordinary meeting, and that was to add the in-kind component from community members, and just acknowledging that and saying that we appreciate it from council. So the change is number 2, the in-kind component dedicated for community members attending advisory groups is acknowledged and appreciated by council.
And I believe you've got a seconder in Councillor Marquette. So speak to your motion, Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that the community would be forgiven for any confusion around this deferred motion. Since writing it and sending it to staff over a month ago for ordinary meeting, we then had another staff written motion appear concerning the formal committee, council committees in the same business paper for the 24th of August. Now, although we informally refer to advisory groups as committees, it's now significant to refer to them only as advisory groups, given the resolution on committees on that particular 24th of August meeting when this motion was deferred. There's currently, to my knowledge, 21 advisory groups, 131 community representatives and external agencies or external agency representatives, 76 councillor held positions across all the groups. Absences alone raise some serious red flags. The average attendance rate for councillors is 44%. The average attendance rate for community members is just 61%. Last year, there were 51 advisory group meetings, and I acknowledge that there is an in-kind component of community members giving up their time with a value somewhere between around $78,000 for their time and travel to meetings. And I'd like to thank staff and the members of the community for their time and effort that goes into attending those meetings. But I've been very disappointed in the meetings in general. Cost to this council with a budget deficit is over $4,889 per meeting, and at a cost of $250,000 per year. So in total, a cost of around $1 million over our 4-year term. Barriers to diversity, as identified by community members in recent feedback back to council, are of a major concern to me. Now, back in April 2018, I did raise concerns regarding the appointments on the grounds that advisory group members did not accurately represent the 340,000 people across the Central Coast. At that time, around 30% of the chosen appointments belonged to one particular community group, which was the Community Environment Network. Now, after putting forward some advisory groups, I've been very concerned about the appointment process in general, after being present during some of the exclusion of some qualified candidates. Last week, I did resign from 4 different advisory groups, 3 of which had the same councillor in a key chair position. Since writing this motion, we've had numerous discussions on advisory groups at council, and I understand that chairs moving forward will be formally contacting committee members in relation to continuing as members or giving them the option to resign. Until bringing this particular motion and having the discussions, I wasn't aware that we could resign. So I think that's important moving forward, that we open up that communication, giving the absent rates. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. Councillor Marquette is seconder of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And congratulations, Councillor Gale. I love seeing motions like this that are brave. We know within the chamber they won't be popular, but it's something that I know Councillor Gale has been banging on about, and so have I for a very long time. There wasn't many things when I came in, obviously, to this first term of council, like many councillors that are here, that really shocked the hell out of me. Sorry to be blunt, but one of the things that did was not only these committees, but the way they're formed, and quite frankly, what a stitch up they are. And I use that word stitch up. I won't use the colleague's name, but I was actually in hospital. I just had an operation the day that a lot of the community members were selected for these committees, and I sent a message, how did we go? And what came back was the words stitch up. Because like Councillor Gale has just said, a particular community group that could, that quite frankly, when you look at their financials, has something like 58 financial members, had over 70% of the voting rights of the Central Coast that has a population of 364,000. Now, that doesn't make any sense. But as we all know now, the 15 people that were elected get to choose those individuals, and Labor and the green-minded independents got together and put particular people in there. Now, I can understand if that's your particular persuasion, that's your ideology, you'd be very happy with that outcome. So if you're happy with the outcome, you should be happy to see how much this is costing, because you might think it's bang for buck. You might think $1 million over the term's fine, but let's get that confirmed. So congratulations, Councillor Gale. I think it's really important we do this now. I mean, I opened the local paper up the other day, and our very own Deputy Mayor, Councillor Jane Smith's got her weekly article she's got now, and the very first line is, one of the first things that our new Central Coast Council did was re-establish a number of the advisory committees. So that's an ownership, and that's correct. And I want to congratulate the Deputy Mayor for being so honest. That did happen. We came into this place and we took, just off the top of my head, I don't know, 12 committees and doubled them. Now, what that does is it doesn't just double the amount of individuals. It certainly doesn't do that because we just had the same CEN people on every committee. What it does, but it definitely doubles the cost. And are we getting bang for buck? Are we getting outcome for that? Well, I personally don't believe we are. I believe what Councillor Gale just outlined is an absolute fact. I believe it's an echo chamber. Unless you were a certain person that's got a certain ideology, you had Buckleys of getting on this committee. So anyone who thinks that they want to be on an advisory committee in the next term of council, if we have this same situation, the same scope of works for selection, you've got Buckleys. You've got absolute Buckleys, unless you actually decide to preach a certain side of politics. That's not the way it should be. We should be bouncing ideas off people. We should be bouncing ideas around a room so we come up with good outcomes. We shouldn't be just sitting within an echo chamber. Congratulations, Councillor Gale.
Thanks, Councillor Marquette. Do I have anybody speaking against the motion? No? Councillor Gale, looks like you've got rather...
Madam Mayor, I've got a question, sorry.
Oh, sorry. My apologies, you did.
Councillor Gale, I was just wondering, in part 2, you've got the in-kind component dedicated from community members. I was just wondering if you would also add councillors and stakeholder representatives to contribute to estimate their in-kind as well. Is that okay with you?
You're on mute.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I've just unmuted myself. Happy to include stakeholders. That is the intent of number 2, but I won't be including councillors, no.
Well, Madam Mayor, I'll move an amendment then, if I've got a seconder. And it will be the same motion. Be the same motion, just with the inclusion of councillors, if I could.
Councillor Sundstrom supporting that.
So I'll just briefly speak to that, Madam Mayor. And look, I'm not going to respond to the comments made by Councillor Gale and Marquette, because it's really just more of the same. And considering Councillor Marquette, couldn't be bothered attending one meeting of the Mangrove Mountain and Spencer Advisory Committee, which was really concerned about the issues in his ward, I think that kind of says everything. But look, I think, by all means, let's get those estimates and really acknowledge the contribution of those people that participate in these committees. But that needs to include those councillors that have bothered to show up. So I think that's worth including. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sundstrom, you wanted to speak on the amendment?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's a good amendment. I think that it adds to and changes slightly the direction of this motion. It did come up originally as a bit of a witch hunt, and that's a bit disappointing. It was nice to see Councillor Gale add in the in-kind donation from the community members, because that's important and it needs to be recognised. But to hear her say that she was unaware that she could walk away from the committees, that was a bit surprising. In fact, the idea of trying to run these committees down is abhorrent to me, and reminds me of, in some ways, how the old former Gosford and Wyong councils walked away from the community. And for information of any councillors that are thinking about, walking away from the community in this way, I'd invite them to think about resigning from council completely.
Thanks, Councillor Sundstrom. I guess I just want to speak in general. I want to thank the community for the input that they have had on these committees. I don't support the views of Councillor Marquette in relation to stacking committees. The committees that I certainly am on and chair have a broad range of participants, and it's a committee that is a doing committee, and we're getting a lot of things done. So I want to thank the community that come together and spend time on these committees. The support that we get from you is what helps us guide and educate what we should be doing for the broader community. So I want to thank the community, but also want to thank the staff and acknowledge the work that the supportive staff, the administrative staff do in organising the meetings and keeping us on track, sending out minutes of meetings. It's all an important role, and those committees couldn't exist without the support of staff. So I'd like to actually acknowledge the good work that's done with the staff and the councillors that are on it, and of course our community members who volunteer and give up their time to share their experiences and make the community to what it is. So thank you, councillors. I'm just checking. Councillor McGregor, I've got you speaking against.
Thank you. Look, I really wasn't planning on speaking to this, but the point has got to be made that this information has already been provided to councillors in the councillor support updates previously. You already know the answers. The only reason why this motion has come before this council is because we want to go on an extended witch hunt, and the constant CEN Labor Greens takeover tell council boring routine. This has got nothing to do with the costs. It's a smear campaign. It's a politically motivated thing. And the reality is that you have two views. You have the view that the committees are important because they not only enfranchise the community, but it's also about working with key stakeholders like the EPA, Roads and Maritime Service, all these statutory bodies which are part of the statutory committees that the state government forces to have. And then you have another view that let's try and politicise them. Let's not have any input from the committee, and let's try and run these ridiculous, illegitimate arguments based on a 17th century philosophy of we can't do that, it costs too much money. But those same people bring motions to this chamber and they try and change staff reports to try and spend money from this council, and that's fine, but this is not. It's just silly, councillors. This is not really a legitimate motion under any circumstance. The information which has been requested has already been provided. And the reality is that some of these committees, you couldn't really accurately estimate or judge the in-kind contribution because you have people who are working in the field through government agencies or the private sector. You have people with PhDs. How can you accurately judge someone from the Economics Committee who's from one of the Chamber of Commerce's, or from the business lobby groups of New South Wales, and compare them to someone who is an environmental engineer who's there from the EPA, or compare them to someone else who's just a community member, maybe a retired person who's interested in community groups? It's just a waste of time. It's a waste of staff resources, and it's a waste of, God, it's a waste of everything. It's a waste of space, like a lot of people here, but we'll move on. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McGregor.
Madam Mayor, could I just interrupt? Based on Councillor McGregor's comments that this information has been provided previously, and I tend to agree with him, could I just get some clarification through the CEO? I mean, that is my recollection, whether the staff feel that they have already provided this information. Could we get some clarification around that?
Yeah. That would be Miss Sullivan. She's popped up.
And I will just flag, Ms Sullivan, if that is the case, then I'll just ask it to be redistributed rather than come back through a report to council. It's a waste of resources if it's already been circulated.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I've just been having a look at what has been provided previously. Cost estimates in terms of staff time have been provided previously. Cost estimates in terms of committee member time and effort has also been costed. Attendance rates have also been reported, and participation rates have previously been reported. The data is not current, but that information has been provided previously.
All right, with that information, with the seconder of the amendments approval, I would just perhaps reword this to just recirculate the previous information to councillors regarding these matters, and remove the need for it to come back to a council meeting. I mean, I'm sure those councillors can distribute it to whoever they want, but it's just a waste of resources and meeting time for it to come back again when it's already been provided. Councillor Sundstrom, would you support that as seconder of the amendment? Yep.
That's a thumbs up. So,
yes. So if I could just, if we could just change part 1, that the CEO redistribute previous information provided regarding the matters below. And if we could just and if we could then just say all costs accumulated, so just delete the report on all and just have all costs accumulated. The next one can stay the same. Part 3 can become the estimated costs, so just delete that the CEO report on and just leave it as the estimated costs. And we can just leave part 4 as is, it doesn't need to change. So sorry to throw that at the meeting staff at the last minute, but I think Councillor McGregor made a good point that we've had this numerous times before. So I'll leave it there, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I have Councillor Hogan wanting to speak against.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually am going to speak against this. I could make an amendment and ask for the costings of the participation by community members and stakeholders. However, I think what will happen there is that you'll come up with the same amount, the $1 million. So I'm really, really disappointed in the attitude here and how we devalue volunteering and contribution from our community residents into, as everybody says, the third biggest council in Australia, New South Wales, you know, and you're actually demoralising and demeaning their contributions, their skills, their talents, what they can offer. These people are doctors, lawyers, surveyors, post office workers, teachers. These people have skills in their other life. And I really hope that when I retire, that I don't just become an old person and a retiree. I'm somebody that has contributed to society, both socially, economically. And that's actually how I see that this motion actually treats our residents. If you go for a grant with council, they'll say, what's the in-kind contribution? And I'm not sure if you know this, Councillor Gal, but it's $30 per hour for a volunteer and it's $75 an hour for a consultancy stakeholder. So if you did the maths on that, I think that you find the contribution is by and large much heavier than what the staff contribute and also what the councillors and certainly what the councillors contribute. The other part to that is that these advisory groups are actually set up for the community. We got rid of the precinct committees, and this was another way for community to have their voice, to help shape it, to help plan it. And I was on the PAMP committee with you, Councillor Gale, and I remember you being at one meeting, but most of those meetings you did phone in and you did contribute to that because you were exercising your right to support your community, which is what you should be doing. And that's the focus of these advisory groups is to support our residents. So in all, I'm really, really saddened to hear that you put cost before community. You put cost before your role as a councillor, and the same as Councillor Marquette. But I shouldn't be really surprised by this, because this government actually relies on an economy of volunteers that they devalue and they do not support. So with that, I do not support the motion nor the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hogan. I believe I have Councillor Greenaway is next.
Thank you. Most of my comments have already been made by other councillors, but I just did want to emphasise that the advisory groups are really a two-way communication tool, and we get all the information and input from the community, but the community members also get all the specialist knowledge from the different government departments and consultants and things that come in to discuss issues at those groups. So those community members can take some of that information back to the community. I don't know that much of it would be confidential. There might be the occasional thing, but they can share a lot of it with their local people and contribute that way. Councillor Hogan, you're not muted. Sorry, just sometimes it's important. Yeah, so I guess that's my point, that it's baffling, it's saddening that people would consider that these committee groups or advisory groups aren't valuable enough and their input isn't valuable enough to continue with them, and that they're just going to resign. But equally, it's just sad to remove that really good communication tool between council and the community, because we always talk about trying to develop a relationship with the community, and I think that these groups are a really important way of doing that, and just to devalue them is, yeah, I think a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Gale, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have a question, but I'm going to phrase it as a comment, and that is that obviously in the motion I've put forward, it acknowledges members. So a lot of the comments that are being thrown around now are ridiculous.
Sorry, Councillor Gale, it's a question, not a comment, because you can do your right of reply if that's where it ends up. But if you've got a question, because you've already spoken to it, and then you get right of reply. So now it's a question. So can you frame it in a question?
No, I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other speakers for or against the amendment? No. Okay, so councillors, I will now go to the amendment. I will now put the amendment as moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Sundstrom. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Councillor Smith, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Greenaway and Councillor Matthews. All those against the amendment. Councillor Holstein, Councillor Marquette, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Burke, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Gale and Councillor Vincent. I have to do my maths. Sorry, can you keep your hands up for a second? Sorry, I've got people all over the screen. Councillor Holstein, you're against? Yeah, can you split 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't move your hand, it's really hard. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's how many of us are there? I'm totally lost. 2. Okay, sorry. I believe the amendment's is going down. So therefore the amendment has been lost. So we will move back to the motion. Councillor Gale, you now do have right of reply, which you can now speak to it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Some of those comments were quite interesting because it did become quite political, admittedly, this particular debate, but you'll notice number 2 of my motion did discuss the in-kind component from community members, and it's acknowledging them and it's saying that we appreciate them at council. So any of those comments targeting community members really are off topic. I don't think that councillors need another feather in their bow. You know what you signed up for. If you're going to a lot of advisory groups, that's your call. We don't need to be throwing a bouquet to every councillor that goes to an advisory group meeting. A lot of the costings have been said that it's been circulated. Some of the costings have been circulated since I wrote this motion. We're going back over a month now when I wrote it, sent it through, it's been deferred. In that time, there's been a lot of discussion about it. And yes, we have had some emails about it, but we don't have all the figures that I've actually asked for. I think it would be relevant that we do get some more costings for the groups going forward for the next year, and to get a costing at this point at the end of September, which is when we would have given up our election would have come and our term would have been over. So what is the entire cost? If we could get those figures in, I think it would be beneficial. Again, this is not targeting the community members. We all appreciate their time. It's targeting the lack of diversity that I found on these particular advisory groups. That was my experience. And I think if we had have had a bit more diversity, it could have been a successful operation. But in my opinion, it was not diverse. There was reasons for that. It was personalities in the room. And that's why I've put this particular motion forward. I hope that my fellow councillors support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. All those in favour of the motion as moved by Councillor Gale, second by Councillor Marquette, please raise your hand. Councillor Holstein, Councillor Marquette, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Burke, Councillor Gale. All those against. Councillor Matthews, Councillor Smith, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Greenway and Councillor Vincent. I declare the motion lost. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 5.2. Councillor McLaughlin, you're the second author, so it's in your name.
That's fine, thanks.
Do you have a do you have a seconder?
Yes, I think Councillor Marquette is going to second this, I think.
Is that a nod from you? Yes, okay. Great. Councillor Marquette, the floor is yours. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. This is full credit to Councillor Best, who unfortunately can't be here tonight. He's the one that's actually taken this matter up and asked me to second it because it does impact onto a gateway into the entrance ward as well as you come off the freeway. I think, unfortunately, as a council, we often get criticised for public amenities and things like that, which is not in our control, and this is a state-owned asset, and I think it's a chance for us as councillors to be proactive and say, hey, we're doing our best to try and, with the new litter policy and graffiti policies and things like that, can you guys get on board as our state counterparts and do your bit and try and clean the place up? So it's pretty self-explanatory. Councillor Best has gone through and label the things as the residents see that, the Tukli Taj Mahal building and the abandoned Gurrakan Fish Co-op, both things that we don't have control of, and so I think this is just a classic case for us to be proactive and write to our local member, the state member up there, and say, we're trying to do our bit as a council and trying to improve our appearances for the coast, especially an entry into the northern area. Come off the freeway and you're coming into Nora Head and the beaches and that sort of thing. You don't really want to drive past, what obviously graffiti state-owned buildings and that sort of thing. I think it's just a chance for us to say, hey, we don't own it, but you guys do, and can you get in and clean it up? We did exactly the same thing with the entrance bridge. When it was first elected, one of the first things it is, a question on notice, was to write to the state member there and say, look, the entrance bridge is peeling and unpainted. It's a terrible gateway into the entrance, and within a week or two of writing that to the state government, suddenly there was paint work on the entrance bridge. So I think as a council, we just look at this and say, let's be proactive and write to our local members and say, look at our entries and see what you can do for us. So I think it's self-explanatory. I don't need to go on the full 3 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Marquette, seconder of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to take this chance to obviously wish the author of this one, Councillor Best, a speedy recovery. He's had an operation last week, apparently, so I hope he's feeling a bit better soon. I think it's been covered by Councillor McLaughlin, then the importance of this motion. And I just wanted to add to it. I was in Tibooburra recently, and as you drive into, they've got 4 entry points into town, and every one of those entry point has a huge, you'd call it a piece of artwork out of wrought iron. And I was talking to actually one of the local councillors in the pub there, and he was telling me how that years ago when this came to pass, the council put it out, you know, what would we like to do? And a bit like we were talking about in the last motion, the community all came together. And this guy said, I'll supply the wrought iron. The other guy said, well, I can do the work. And the other guy said, well, I've got the machine to get it there. They did this. These wrought iron structures are unbelievable. They show the huge word Tibooburra, every one of them. They've got about 20 metres long, each one. They've got all action, like they've got farm seeding. They've got tractors in them. They're the most amazing thing you've ever seen. And I guarantee you not one person, not one tourist would ever drop a piece of litter there. They would never even think about it, because you can see how much pride the town's got in it. Now, I know that's a lot easier when you're talking about a small town like Tibooburra, where the Central Coast were huge, but baby steps, little things like this. As people are driving into any part of the Central Coast, they need to think to themselves, geez, these guys have got respect for the place. And then those tourists, those individuals will have the same respect. It'll be reciprocated. I think it's really important. Anything we can do to really improve the visual aspect of the Central Coast is going to improve the Central Coast at large. So I'd really hope everyone can vote for this one. And congratulations to Councillor Best and Councillor McLaughlin for bringing it to us. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Marquette. Councillor Hogan.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McLaughlin. Are you speaking about the entry to Toukley, or are you speaking about the other motion?
I think it's the Toukley-Gorican, isn't it? Isn't that the area there where all the
Okay, so you are speaking to that motion.
There's all photographs supplied with this notice of motion, the co-op and the.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to clarify with you. Yeah, look, I'll speak against this motion, and probably the reason why, even though I've only been in council one term, I've certainly lived on the coast for 34 years or something, and this isn't a new thing, and we've heard this in council since 2003 about the development, firstly the old restaurant, and now what we're looking at is the RMS. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I cannot support this is that every time there's a motion up by our councillors, we again are denigrating the whole of the Central Coast. We're calling it shanty towns. If I lived in Toukley and I had a councillor call where I lived a shanty town, really? I'd be really disappointed. We can't, you got to turn that around and look at the positive. And we've got a graffiti management strategy that's just gone out on display. We've got people that clean up graffiti, and council cleans up to graffiti. I've been known to actually clean meters and meters of graffiti. So perhaps Councillor Best and McLaughlin would like to get a group of people together, which is what other communities do, and actually clean off the graffiti themselves. That's my first suggestion. The other thing with the old restaurant that is there, I understand that all they have to do is lay a brick, and they've agreed to their development application. I do believe that council needs to get tough on that. The foundations of the old Toukley Bridge, it's a state issue. Our local member, David Harris, has contacted the RMS, and the response is that the team are currently still working on it for the protection of the bridge, and they're expected to continue for a few more months. And they're not expected to finish it until 2021, weather permitting. So they're doing this cathodic protection, which is the technique used to control the corrosion of surface metal. The co-op wharf, again, is state. I don't have a problem with staff writing to the state and saying, please fix it up. What I have a problem with is denigrating our area. If we said, and we've got another motion up which is really similar, saying that staff need, we're tourism and we're going to have the holidays, so let's clean up, make sure the bins aren't overflowing, and all of this fanfare about this awful area that we live in. Look, I'm really quite surprised, councillors, that you still live on the Central Coast, because I haven't seen a notice of motion that has actually come to the council that shows anything nice about the aesthetics of the area we live in. If you don't like it, get in, muck in, clean it up and do something about it. A notice of motion is not necessarily going to fix it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hogan. I don't have any. Oh, I have Councillor Holstein and Councillor Greenaway, but Councillor Holstein, you were first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Congratulations, Councillor Hogan. I will not be voting the same way as you, because I do support the motion to get it cleaned up. But you are correct in what you say, in the way some of these motions are then put and how they're denigrating, or they're using emotive words and actually trying to bring it down. So I agree with you on that comment. But the only thing I've got to say here, whilst I support the motion because I'm sympathetic, when you actually come into Gosford, it has been a long battle for us for a property just between North Gosford near Wyoming there to get it cleaned up. And it's still going on. Thank heaven for court orders that were issued about a month ago that might see that change, as the property's now been sold and cleaned up. Here's a property that has government ownership on it, and they need to clean it up. And I think that's what we've got to look at. I go back to the notice of motion. You look at the 5-part notice of motion. We note. There's only really one action in there, and that's the action under, I think, part 3, which is the right to the RMS and the Department of Lands. That's what should have been in the motion. Everything else is background and should be as such. If you talk it up, that's great, but we're talking it down, and Councillor Hogan is very correct. We're making it emotive, and it should just stick to the facts. Facts are we need to take action on it. That's all that needed to come out of this. Everything else in that motion is background. We've really got to learn, councillors, before the next councillor comes in, on how to put a notice of motion up. Each point should be an action that we're going to take, not necessarily I've been consistent and critical on how we word our motions. And we're just trying to get emotiveness and argument into there. And Councillor Hogan is right. It denigrates our area. It's a great area to live. So put a notice of motion up that says we need to address it by all means. I'll support this because it does need to have action taken. But there's about 5 parts of that plus 6 dot points you can take out. It's not relevant to it. The relevance is there's a problem, let's address it, and that's in part 3. But for the sake of just moving forward, I'll accept the motion. It's part 3 that's really the action that needs to take place, not everything else. That's all background information, relevant, but not necessary in the motion. And the wording of it's just sensationalistic on how we word some of these motions. Great gateway disgrace and all of that. Please, can we be above the childish antics of some of our commentary that we have on our notices of motion and stick to the facts of what we're trying to achieve? Thanks, councillors.
Thanks, Councillor Holstein. Councillor Greenaway, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That area of the Central Coast is not in my ward, so I didn't want to be the person to put forward an amendment, but I'm hoping that Councillor Hogan or Councillor Vincent might do so. But I'm just flabbergasted by the whole thing because after I saw this motion, I Googled a little bit about what other notices of motion and other things may have come up. And straight away you get a council takes action against Taj Mahal eyesore, and that was in 2010. And it said that Wyong Council had issued a formal order for completion of Tukley's Taj Mahal, and that Councillor Best said the matter will be taken to the Land and Environment Court if the owners don't comply. That was 10 years ago. Then I find a question on notice from the same councillor saying, on behalf of the residents and ratepayers of the Greater Tukley District, once again raise their concerns and utter frustration at the now some 7 year sorry saga of the Tukley Taj Mahal. please advise ASAP and update council on what's been going on with the eyesore, because it's a gateway to our beautiful Toukley and Shires North. So it's, you know, just rehashing what's already been before council. But if it was 7-year, saga in 2013, that means it's gone back to 2006. So it's been a problem for 14 years. So I just think, I don't know what Councillor Best has been doing, but quite clearly it appears that it's not been effective. So if Councillor Hogan or Councillor Vincent could possibly take the lead on this, I'm not saying what you should do, but all these other attempts, if it's still looking like that for at least 14 years after he first raised it, I don't think much is happening. So I know Councillor Vincent's been on previous councils. He might know really the best way to approach this, but I'm dumbfounded that someone would get up and jump up and down about something they raised 14 years ago. But anyway, leave it in the hands of the ward councillors.
Thanks, Councillor Greenaway. And Councillor Vincent's got his hand up and maybe be able to give a bit more background to it and some history.
Thanks, Councillor Hogan. Councillor Sundstrom was next, and then I'm moving over to Councillor Vincent.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just because I've gone over the staff recommendations and in light of the revelation that Councillor Holstein has made, that there's really only one part to this motion that calls for an action. I'm looking at that part and I'd like to ask the CEO if he might like to give some commentary. Part 3 says that the council write to the RMS and Department of Lands on behalf of our local community, demanding that their areas of responsibility be immediately addressed. What does the CEO consider to be the areas of responsibility for RMS and the Department of Lands? And because to me, that's a pretty broad statement. And how successful should we be when we demand the state government does this or does that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Councillor Sundstrom, I think the response that has been provided, the CEO response to the notice of motion, I guess covers off some of your questions in relation to Transport for New South Wales in relation to the properties and the lands that they own, and just seeing what the issue there. There's also, I think, to Councillor Greenaway's comment around the previous actions around enforcing orders issued by the Land and Environment Court, getting some further advice on that. I suppose to your point around the language, I guess that's a matter for the author in terms of demanding. I think we'd certainly be, if the motion was passed, writing to the RMS and Department of Lands expressing the concerns expressed by councillors and seeking their response to whatever action they would be undertaking in response to those presentations.
Thank you.
Councillor Vincent.
One, two. Thanks, Madam Mayor. You really got to be in two minds with this. The community does need some representation in this area, but the inflammatory way this is written, and I agree with what Councillor Hogan's saying about how everything's so bad, and it's just surprising that some of these councillors still live in the area. But if at Councillor Greenaway's prompting, if I could just work through maybe Councillor Holstein's very good at this, if I could work through an amendment, taking some of that out and just leaving some basic representation to clean this area up, which I think is still needed. If we could work through that, and I apologise to the staff who are going to have to try and do this on the run. So I'll just go on point 1 there, that council notes take out just the word great. And I'm hoping if anybody's got any suggestion, just demute and chime in if you can. that council note with concern the continuing deterioration of the visual amenity and overall public safety in and around the Tootley Bridge Gateway. It's jumping up and down precinct due to graffiti, just graffiti on the RMS worksite. Full stop. The concrete shell known as the Tootley Taj Mahal, it is known as that, and it's dilapidated abandoned wharf. I'll take guidance from others, just chime in if you've got, go Councillor Greenaway.
I think perhaps all that is needed is a report back from staff as to what we can do, and the letters to RMS and the Department of Lands, if they're and maybe we should say and other relevant authorities. But all the other stuff I just think should go. And then we've just got the 2 points that we write to RMS, the Department of Lands and other relevant authorities. And number 4, that we get a thorough report, because we need to know, but why it's taken 14 years, I have no clue. And so perhaps they haven't been writing the letters, or they haven't said to write letters, or they've just jumped up and down but not actually achieved anything. I'm not sure. I wasn't on council. I don't live in that area. But as the other side of the bridge is the very northern part of Wyong Ward. So I'm happy to take some leadership on this, even though I'm not the one that's raising it. So if you can put an amendment up, if the staff can put an amendment up, if you're happy for this, Councillor Vincent, from Councillor Vincent and myself, just deleting everything except points 3 and 4, which will become 1 and 2, with a tiny bit of wording, which I'll...
With due respect, Councillor Green, I think we do have to just be specific on some areas that need fixing, and just saying we're writing, I think we've got to actually highlight
just
something.
take out the emotion. And put,
it's just the 14 years is baffling to me. But anyway.
Look, you're right, and this is just a recycling of a previous motion. So it's, and maybe part of that 50% is the inaction that's happened here. And 50% of that is just someone who thinks that clocking up a big motion sheet shows that they're doing something, maybe. But I think there does need to be some representation here. So if we can, where did we go? It's all jumped around again. If we could just go through, Councillor Smith, sorry, it looks like I'm running the meeting out, doesn't it?
Madam Mayor, would you mind if I just made a very quick suggestion, which may just be dismissed outright, so it won't take a lot of time. I was just wondering if the councillors might consider just changing the motion completely to arranging a site visit for interested ward for the ward councillors with, whoever the relevant staff member is, and identifying relevant issues for follow-up with state agencies.
That's a good suggestion, but the 3 ward councillors have travelled over that bridge, what, I don't know, 1,000 times. We really know that area, and we don't need to go there to look at it and go, yeah, that's what we were talking about in the meeting. We really don't. We just need to do this, move on, because there's other motions that people...
Okay, Councillor Vincent, can you then put up your suggestion, what you want to do with it?
Sorry. Yep,
kind of going around in circles now.
Can I go?
Jump in.
Okay, so who wants to change the motion or move an amendment? So, okay, Councillor Hogan, I'll go to you. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
I thought I was already moving an amendment. I thought that's what I was doing. I was just trying to accommodate people.
Well, so what are you doing? You're putting it out there and giving people options. So I'm now saying, is that what you want?
If there was an item to be discussed along the way. Councillor Hogan, have you got a suggestion for this amendment? Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, that's all I'm saying, is to take the motion out and just stick with the actual places.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with Taj Mahal. That's where we got to.
Okay.
The remnant collapsing and highly dangerous foundations of the old Tootley Bridge. We just need the collapse, the foundations of the old Tootley Bridge.
Good one. Yep, that's good.
The Gok and Fish Co-op building, including fencing.
I think we need to mention the asbestos there. I think that's a key point. That'd be a safety
Oh, is there
issue.
asbestos there? Yeah, there is too.
So where it says abandoned asbestos, just instead of laden, just say contaminated.
Yeah, contaminated asbestos and
Contaminated.
2 points.
And dilapidated. Yeah, that's
2
good.
points, the abandoned asbestos, and then the next line would be dilapidated Gorokan Fish Co-op.
E can go, I think, can't it? That's a double up of D. Delete
is.
E.
And delete E and wall.
The rotting seaweed
River platform and jail-like fencing.
I've seen that a few times, and I thought, wow, that we could do better. So to have a clean up.
That's ours, isn't it? Yeah, that's
to have a clean up. There's okay, I think. D, C, D. What are we up to? We've got E, F, abandoned asbestos. So we can delete the bottom D further down. Thanks, councillors. We're getting there, hopefully.
Yeah.
And where it said that council right to the RMS, so number 3, if we could paste that in, please, from the top there. That council right to the RMS department. Oh, it's already at the top there. Okay, good.
We don't demand.
You don't demand.
Do we demand?
Requesting.
Yeah, requesting. Follow the report for council, and indeed the community is considering it as the best way forward to beautify and take more seriously is important. Yeah, that one. That's probably the best one. And
it's
now
going to disappear, and where it says to be immediately addressed, local community requesting that their areas of responsibility be addressed as soon as practicable. And take the immediately out.
Yep.
I hope that, I mean, I'm okay to try and capture what Councillor Best was discussing there, because I think there is areas there that we can tidy up.
Yeah, I agree.
If we can just I don't know, Councillor Greenaway.
Just briefly, can we add to number 1, RMS, Department of Lands, and just put and other relevant authorities, because it may be that there's another 1 or 2 that have got some responsibilities in there, and I'd hate to just think we have to bring it back just to get permission for to write. So
that's a good one. Thank you. Has anybody else got a comment here?
And could I also, I wondered if we should ask the staff, can any of them offer any suggestions as to why it's taken 14 years and still looking the way it is, because certainly I don't want to be just doing the same thing that obviously hasn't worked. So if the staff can make any suggestions as to how this can be addressed, it might be helpful.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if any of the staff are able to, that would be great.
Who would be the minister for that? CEO Gary Murphy, have you got an idea? Through you,
Madam Mayor.
Yep, Mr. Cox.
Councillor Vincent, Councillor Greenaway. I think the way forward is as per the CEO's response in terms of writing to the relevant agencies responsible for those state government assets. In terms of the Taj Mahal, I can give you a bit of a history lesson in terms of action, in terms of that site. The former Warren Council were involved in a legal case with the owners of that site, and court orders were issued, I think around 2012, 2013. But the constant, whilst court orders were issued in terms of finishing the development, impractical, very difficult to enforce someone to spend money that they may not have in actually completing a development. So the legal advice has always been that the cost may not be achievable, but the cost could be exorbitant. So very difficult to force someone to actually build something if they don't have the money. But so the approach that staff have taken is to work with the owner of the site to ensure that it is cleaned up. It is in a far better state in terms of the the overgrown graffiti, just having fencing in place. That's been put in place, and staff are have touched base with the owner again. Staff were in touch with the owner about 18 months ago too about actually finishing the development, and they were talking about doing some amendments, but that's sort of fallen away as well too. But staff will have recently reached out to the owner of the site to find out, well, what are the intentions going forward.
Thank you for that. In the absence, has anybody else got a suggestion here? Anything really, Councillor Sundstrom?
I know this is an unusual thing, and we're sort of talking conversationally rather than going through a chair, but through you, Madam Mayor. I just think that it's a value that we should put the words from the staff recommendation or the staff notes that follow on from should the motion be endorsed as the actions. I think that they've accurately described what needs to happen. And I can put those in the chat if you like, or it's on page 343 of the business paper.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if the staff can copy that in. Thank you, Councillor Sundstrom. How are we going? Is there any other comments? Otherwise, I'm Councillor Hogan, Councillor Granoy. Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Granoy.
Just RMS also appears in 2A.
It should be Transport New South Wales, not RMS. Okay, so once we get the addition of point 3, which is a suggestion from Councillor Sundstrom. Councillors, I'm going to be moving that we move on with this. Sorry, but we're almost exhausted the half an hour on trying to get a second part, an amendment. Councillor Greenaway.
I just noticed that Send Transport for New South Wales and Department of Lands, that's already included, so we'd sort of be doubling up. Sorry, what Councillor Sundstrom's put in the chat box. But I do think identify other options could be helpful. So we could put that in there. Because I don't know that you can put, should the motion be endorsed, we should just say that council officers, because we're about to endorse the motion, I would hope. So in 3, just say that council officers, : There's a lot of spinning going on. Is it frozen?
If I could just offer some advice, councillors, the response that we've put forward is on the assumption that the motion does go forward. So we will be doing that automatically if the motion's put forward.
Ah, okay.
And
all right, well, maybe we should just, as someone said, put it.
So I actually have got a procedural. Councillor Marquette and Councillor McGregor have requested that the motion be put. So do I have all those in favour of putting the motion? Well, is this now the amendment or the motion? Because we still have an amendment and a motion. So motion in the name of Councillor McLaughlin and amendment in the name of Councillor Vincent. That's where we're at right now. So I'm now going to run up the flagpole that the amendment is put. All those in favour of putting the amendment? I think we have unanimous. Thank you, councillors. I will now put the amendment as moved by Councillor Vincent, seconded by Councillor Hogan. All those.
Can I do a quick writer reply on that?
Sorry, you can't. The motion's been put.
Oh,
So,
I'll thank Councillor Best for bringing this to the attention of the chamber.
Great, thanks.
Good.
We're having issues with the minutes as they're writing, but everybody's got the gist of what the amendment is, right? So I'm now putting it as moved by Councillor Vincent, second by Councillor Hogan. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Matthews, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Smith, Councillor Marquette, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Dale, Councillor Greenway, Councillor Vincent, Councillor Mertens. All those against? Councillor Burke, I'll therefore declare the amendment carried. The amendment becomes a motion. I'm now going to put the motion as moved by Councillor Vincent, seconded by Councillor Hogan. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Matthews, Councillor Holstein. Okay, it looks like it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Wow. Thank you, councillors. I'm a bit numb now. Don't even know where to go after that. We're now moving on to 5.3. Oh, can we adjourn, please? I've got a chat, Ms. Sullivan, we're having some technical issues, so I will do an adjournment for 10 minutes, councillors. Please be back at 8:40. Thank you. We just have some issues with the screen. Thank you. We're just missing Councillor Sundstrom, and Councillor Holstein has left because he has declared a conflict on this one, so he's out of the space.
No, he hasn't left. He's still
Oh.
here. You want to make me leave?
Oh, yes. Somebody kick him out. That was a bit sneaky. Couldn't see you. Okay, I believe Councillor Holstein has now left the space. Councillors, we're moving on to item 5.3, which is the notice of motion saving the Mariners convening a crisis meeting. Councillor McLaughlin, that's in your name. Councillor Gale seconding it. That's a shake of the head? Yep. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. This is full credit to Councillor Best, who unfortunately can't be here tonight. He's the one that's actually put this all together and was the driving force in bringing this forward. When he rang me up and asked me to second it, I said that makes perfect sense to me, and I think and it mirrors the community concerns about the Mariners and what we should be doing. And I do notice that David Harris, who I have a lot of respect for, but I don't always agree with. I agree with him 100% on his views on the Mariners. He has come out quite strongly and said the community should get in behind the club. It's our only national club that we've got, and a loss of the Mariners to the Central Coast would be a massive blow. It's the only national sporting club that showcases the Central Coast, and I think it's important the public understand that the NRL, as much as we love our NRL on the coast, the NRL business model requires 1 million people as a base population to look like getting a license or a team. So the NRL says you're going to have 1 million people, and they don't have any expansion plans regionally. So we couldn't get the Bears up, and I think the coast has adopted the Mariners as their own. And I think, it took 10 years, I think, to get that together. And as it says in here in the notice of motion, for us to not do everything in our possible power to try and keep the Mariners here. And I think tonight is about perceptions. I mean, we can be proactive or reactive. I mean, we are the landlords of the stadium, and I think if we have a potential buyer looking at the Mariners, and they're looking at what's the attitude of the landlord? Are they keen to support the Mariners? Will they jump in and do what they can? Are they we know when they're asked to have a crisis meeting, will they attend it, or are they just going to be indifferent and pass it off as in bureaucratic indifference? And that's what you've got here tonight as councillors. You can be proactive and see what we can do. You can bring in all the stakeholders, and that's state and federal. And you've already got David Harris and Liesl Tesh have been quite supportive of trying to do something for the Mariners. And of course, you'd have Adam Crouch and Lucy Wicks and Emma McBride on federal levels and state levels as well. It's the one team that covers the whole coast. And I think it's something, if we can't just have a meeting, if we can't call a crisis meeting and do what we can as councils, then I don't know what we can do. It doesn't cost us anything at all. It doesn't cost us anything to put all the stakeholders together, but who knows what we could thrash out. I mean, you've heard the Mariners tonight. They're not really happy with the relationship they've got. They don't feel the love from us. And I think, it's time to do what we can, and we look very, very silly if it goes to Canberra.
Thanks, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the motion. We heard from Sean Millenkamp, CEO of the Central Coast Mariners, earlier this evening, and I thank him for coming into the Zoom and addressing us. But he said that we need crisis talks between Council and the Central Coast Mariners. Nationally, Central Coast Mariners are the only national team on the Central Coast. I cannot believe that in the first term of Central Coast Council, we are staring down the barrel of potentially losing the Mariners on the Central Coast. This is not something that I want to have happen in this term. Let's just think for a moment what the Mariners have contributed to the residents of the Central Coast. And what I would say is we've got a sense of pride and we've got a sense of belonging, and that's linked to the Central Coast Mariners. What do the games bring? jobs, jobs, jobs. In a time such as the economic crisis that we have at the moment across Australia, perhaps that's something we want to take into better consideration than what we've done in the past. It brings tourism in. So many Sydney-siders coming in for the games. What do they do for our kids? Numerous different coaching sessions that they've got running through the school holidays, good role models for our kids. We've got the highest youth unemployment. It's something like this is just something we cannot afford to lose. I'll say it again, sense of pride, sense of belonging that the Central Coast links to the Mariners. Can we do everything possible and provide some strategic direction for our operational staff to better the relationship with the Mariners this evening, please? Fellow councillors, support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galt. We've had 2 for. Do I have any against the motion, just to be fair? Councillor Greenaway, you have a question. I know, Councillor Marquette, you're in waiting. You want to speak for it. I understand that. I'm just get some questions out of the way. Councillor Greenaway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to put Councillor McLaughlin on the spot, but I was just intrigued by his comment that you need to have 1 million people to have an NRL team, because Sydney's got, I think, 9 and only 5.2 million people. So what was how do you get, I don't know a thing about rugby league. I know they could be interested in coming up here, but I didn't know there was a population limit, and I just thought, well, how are there so many in Sydney? So can you just clarify your comment?
Yes, I think historically that's the case in Sydney. It was a Sydney comp originally. That's all it was. But when they went nationally, my understanding is, and the Mariners have confirmed it, and I've actually spoken to a high-level NRL executive in the past, that if you want to get a team in the national comp now, the National Rugby League comp, you have to have a support base of 1 million people to be considered for the license, and that is my general industry-wide understanding to get into the NRL. But in the past, it was a Sydney competition. It was it was almost like a local competition in the old days. But today, you need to stump up with 1 million people to be considered by the NRL.
How many people are in Newcastle?
Not 1 million. Nobody can answer that?
Just Googling it. 322,000. How many have we got on the coast? 344,000?
49.
So do we, anyway, I was just intrigued by the comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marquette. You've moved.
Yeah, got it. No, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Madam Mayor. I've got to be honest. Originally, when I read the sort of staff comment, and I think you may have said the same thing during briefings, a similar line. The way I was going to go, I was going just to vote down the lines of what the staff were saying, but after hearing the Mariners representative speak tonight in the public forum, I realised that there's a hell of a lot of questions that are left open, and I think we do need this meeting. I mean, Councillor McLaughlin had 2 questions to the Mariners representative. Yourself, Madam Mayor, you had 3. Councillor Greenaway had 1. Councillor Hogan had 2. Councillor Sundstrom had 1 or 2. I had 1 or 2 on the tip of the tongue, and I'm sure there's others that did as well. So that means that there's very good opportunity there. As an organisation, we haven't got our head around this, and I totally agree with Councillor McLaughlin. We need elite high-end sport on the Central Coast. Now, we're not just pinning our colours to one horse here. We're not taking favourites. There is only one option. I'm a leaguey. I wish it could be the NRL, but the rules are, and Councillor McLaughlin's quite right, existing teams are already in the NRL. Expansion-wise, they want 1 million people. Now, Newcastle, a lot of people don't know this, Newcastle are a foundation club. They started in 1908. I don't know how the hell they got to Sydney in 1908, but they were there. So they're a foundation club. They don't need to worry about expansion, but we're not going to get an NRL team, unfortunately. We need high-end elite sport on the Central Coast. We need to be clicking on Foxtel. We need to be turning on KO and seeing our stadium. The only way that's going to happen that I can see is for us to do anything we can. Now, that's obviously that's within our means. That's within the ways we can support them. And I don't think anyone's trying to articulate in this motion exact ways. What this motion's about is saying, let's get a meeting together. Let's get it done really quickly. And let's get the important people at the table that need to be there to make sure that we've done everything we possibly can. I just felt, I don't want to denigrate the staff or their response. I just felt it was a little bit piecemeal. The staff response that we got, maybe there just to sort of clear our conscience for the future. But I just think the clear conscience is usually the sign of a bad memory. So we don't want to have a bad memory here. We don't want us to be clearing our conscience with certain words. Let's just put some actions in. Let's get this meeting done. Let's keep high-end elite sport on the Central Coast. Every time we turn on Foxtel, we want to see that stadium, guys. So let's support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marquette. I just want to, I guess, make a comment, or just to let councillors know what the staff have been doing. I guess I take a little bit frustrated as to the speaker when he came in tonight talking about relationship with council, and council wasn't doing anything. I just want to give you all a bit of a timeline as to what's gone on. So on the 13th of July, I received an email at 6 p.m. The next day, we replied back, and on the 15th of July, a meeting was held with Sean, the CEO of the Mariners, Mr. Murphy, CEO of Council, Mr. Bolgoff, Director of, yep, it's not there, the Director in charge of the stadium, and also their development arm, Mr. Smith, Mr. Greg Smith. Sean came in and expressed that they had some frustrations and that their owner, who's in England, because of COVID, can't come over here, expressed a desire to sell the Mariners because he could no longer afford to carry them. He also asked Mr. Murphy to reach out to him and have a conversation with him, of which Mr. Murphy has reached out to the owner on 4 occasions and has had conversations about keeping the Mariners here and how can we support them. In that meeting, there was some, I guess, we all said that we would do something. Mr. Bolgoff said that he would have some discussions in relation to the development side and the RMS about a road to get onto Wyong Road, because that was an issue. There was also some issue around funding, and we asked Sean as to why they hadn't approached council for funding, as the former Wyong council gave the money through a sponsorship program. And he said, oh, well, we haven't done that. And I said, well, there is that program and you should apply for some funding. There was also a commitment to help them with some of their DA questions, and I believe that's been happening. So from 15th of July, staff have certainly been working with the Mariners to try and get some of their development arm moving. I just want to make it clear that no matter what we do, and I'm happy to have a meeting, as I indicated, we got a meeting up within a day and a half of that request to have a meeting, and we had that meeting, we had the discussion. I want to make it clear that what the owner wants is to sell. He wants to sell the Mariners, and we can't, whatever we can do, whatever crisis meeting we do, unless we put money on the table, we can't actually secure the tenure for the Mariners. It's money. We're talking community money. We're talking $1.5 million to buy the team. That's how we will save the Mariners. Now, I appreciate there's some community support for a community funded project, and I'm fully support that, as do state colleagues, and I'm sure Mr. Crouch would be the same. And so would all the federal members. Happy to have a meeting, but just wanted to get it on the record that staff have been working with the Mariners since the day the evening we got the email at 6 p.m. on the 13th of July, and they have been continuing to support the Mariners. That's all I wanted to say. I think it's important that that timeline gets up, that council just hasn't neglected the Mariners. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Oh, no.
Yeah,
sorry, that was me. I'll stop.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I appreciate your comments, and I thank you for clarifying that. Look, I will support this motion calling for a meeting, but similar to you, I suppose I wanted to be realistic in the expectations. That yes, I think our community has a lot of ownership of the Mariners as a team, and I think our council would like to see the team stay on the coast and should have discussions about how we can, be a part of that. But I just want to be clear that the expectations, need to be realistic. In some of the conversations, there's been discussions about developments, and I think that becomes quite murky, where there may be a misunderstanding of what council should and shouldn't assist with. So I do appreciate the interest and the support for the Mariners. I share those concerns and I would like to see them stay. So I don't see that there is any harm in asking staff to have another meeting. But I would ask, and I'm not going to suggest a change to the motion, that the outcomes of that meeting be, or a summary of that meeting be included in a council update, because it is really quite unclear about the expectations of the Mariners in terms of how council can assist. And I think there would be a community expectation as well about what is reasonable and what is unreasonable. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do I have any more speakers for or against? Any further questions? That would be no. Right to reply. Oh, sorry, Councillor Burke, saved by the bell. You just remuted yourself. No, you're still on mute, Councillor Burke. There you go. No, we still can't hear you. Have you got your microphone? Yeah, you're not on mute, so I don't know. No, cannot hear you, Councillor Burke. Still can't hear you. Do you want to put it in the chat button? And was it a question or a comment? You might need to put it in the chat button and I'll relay it if you like. Yeah, can't hear. Okay, thumbs up. Okay. Right, a reply, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, everybody. I hear what you're saying and your concerns, that sort of thing, but I think and I hear what the Mayor has said about responding to requests from the Mariners and things like that. But in fairness, that you've had the Mayor and the CEO and some staff members there. You haven't had all the key stakeholders there. You haven't had state members. You haven't had federal members. You haven't had the business community and that sort of thing. And this is really beyond just council. This is the whole Central Coast that's affected, and I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to bring everybody together, and that's what this motion says. It says to bring, not only council staff, but to bring our federal and state representatives together and key representatives of our regional business organisations, with a view to identifying options moving forward to maintain the Mariners. And that's what I think a crisis meeting can do. One thing for the staff to respond as the landlord of the stadium and that sort of thing, which is what you've got to do, and you're bound by your regulations around that. But this is beyond that. This is actually being proactive and seeing what we can get together. Who knows what our state and federal MPs can come up with beyond just what our council resources. I don't think anyone expects the council to write a cheque for $1.5 million to buy the Mariners. I don't think any of us expect that at all. But once again, there's a supporters trust coming up. The community have come forward and trying to put money on the table themselves, and I'm not sure what we can do to support that level there. But when you've got community leaders like David Harris coming out and very strongly in support of the Mariners and Lisa Tesh and that sort of thing, you've got your state members already on the front foot. I'm sure federally too, everyone would like to be involved. Lucy Wicks would like to be involved. Emma McBride would like to be involved. I'm sure Adam Crouch would too. So let's see what everyone can come together. And I'm not sure what the other stakeholders are, whether it's, the regional development crew and all that sort of thing. Who knows? Because the Mariners is a big business and it's a big support base, and it brings a lot to the coast. And I think there'll be a vacuum there if we lose it. And I think we've got a great stadium. We can put on different things, but we still won't be a national team. And let's not forget that soccer is the most highly the biggest participation sport on the Central Coast. So questions you've got to ask yourself: if we can't make a go of the biggest participation sport on the Central Coast, what are we going to make a go of the stadium with? So, I urge you to support this motion, bring people together, see what happens. It's just a meeting, see what we can do, and let's know. And who knows? And it's a very good message for anyone that may be looking to buy the Mariners, that the Central Coast Council, as the landlord of the stadium, is keen to try and do something to support the team. And that's really the bottom line. The perception that this council is doing everything that it can to support the Mariners. Anyway, I urge you to back the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McLaughlin. I therefore put the motion as moved by Councillor McLaughlin, second by Councillor Gale. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Bring back Councillor Holstein, please. Councillor Burke, you're definitely not working. Councillor Holstein is back. Great. Item 5.4, notice of motion, Warnervale train station. I believe Councillor McGregor has a small amendment. Do you want to add your amendment? And then I believe Councillor Vincent wants to second you, but if you'd like to add your amendment.
It's already up there. It's the point 4.
Okay. Did you want to, you've got a second to say, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor and fellow councillors. Look, I wasn't planning to speak to this, but since the motion has been in the business paper, I've been contacted by residents of the area asking that in the event that the new station is not to go ahead, that the existing station be upgraded. So essentially, this is a pretty straightforward motion. It's about getting some clarity around what's happening. Now, I understand, because if you go back to the start of the term of the current state Liberal National Party government, the train station was ready to be built. It was budgeted, it was all planned, and then they cancelled the project in 2011. They then made a commitment to deliver the project in 2016, and again, it was cancelled again. So as it stands at the moment, there's no timeline on this. It's being talked about. There's a DA, which from my understanding, I believe has been approved and has been existing for some time. So it's not about council holding this back or anything like that. It's just about the state government putting the money towards it, or coming forward and saying essentially that they're not going to go with the new station, they're going to keep the current station. Now, the point 4 is important because if it is going to be based around the current station, a lot of the people that live in that area, they're actually forced to go to YE or to Wyong, which increases their travel time and their commuting, which is not a good thing. And as you would notice from the 2019 state election campaign, the targeted Liberal seats, the stations that are in those are all getting upgrades. And after campaigning for 4 years, David Meehan was able to bring that to their attention, and they've now followed through with it in the like-for-like commitment with the Narara station and other ones down that southern end. But Warnervale sadly has been left behind. So we need to get some clarity around what's happening with it. It's a simple motion asking that we write to the government so that they can inform us of their plans, and that will allow us to move forward as a council, because people have been buying houses in this area for about bang on 20 years now, with the expectation that they would have not only a town centre and employment zone, but also a train station for them to commute out of the area if they were going to, and it simply hasn't been delivered. So we need to make sure this happens for Warnervale. In the event that it doesn't, it's important that the existing station is upgraded, and that's really essentially what this is about. I'm happy to take any questions on it, but I'd like to see this go through unanimously if we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Vincent, you're seconding the motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, happy to second the motion, and Councillor McGregor's right in what he's said. And there's about, 30,000 people in the city of Warnervale now, and they've bought there with the expectations of a town centre, of a train station, an upgrade or a new one. And they've also bought there with the expectations that they don't have jet aircraft flying over their heads also. But I won't veer off too much into that, because I don't think Councillor McGregor wants the hornet's nest stirred up too much on this one. But I hope other councillors can support this. This is trying to either ask for clarification on the progress of the new station, which has been looked at for a while under successive governments and successive representatives from different areas of those governments. And in the absence of that, if there are some upgrades for the old station which are required, if there's some time, if there's some delay while the new station is still coming along. So I'd recommend this to the chamber, and thanks again, Councillor McGregor, for raising this.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Councillors, do I have anybody in opposition to the motion? No, I have no questions, so therefore I'll go to write a reply. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you. Well, after the last week being all about how quickly we can further or delay the extinction of koalas, it'd be nice to see some movement on some infrastructure and a strategic growth centre for our region. So, councillors, I encourage you to support this and to make the progress that we can. And I also will note, finally, in closing, that both council, from the planning perspective and the private sector from the delivery perspective, are making real inroads with what's happening in the Warnervale area. The WES is going ahead quite well. There's new developments at play there. The town centre, which we've had the site visit with, and some of us went out to the opening there, turning the sod, is clearly steaming ahead. Woolworths are keen to get into there, and there's some exciting plans for the area, lots of new residents, but let's try and do what we can to get them this train station. And if we can't get them the new train station, let's work together to make the existing one better. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I'll therefore put the motion moved by Councillor McGregor, second by Councillor Vincent. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That would be unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 5.5, in the name of Councillor Sundstrom. Councillor Vincent second, and I know Councillor Gale, you had some questions, so I'll let Councillor, no? Okay. Councillor Sundstrom, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I've got a question, if I could start off with that before speaking to the motion. And it relates to the fact that we've got the waste strategy in the business paper tonight as well. It's mentioned in that document that there's potential to develop an enclosed facility to process dry waste streams subject to viable volumes. Could we get some commentary on that? Is it from Mr. Martello? Just wondering what that might mean.
So, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Sundstrom, the dry waste streams is essentially more to do with what you do with your pickups, so your curbside pickups, the bulkier waste. That we have 6 scheduled pickups from properties. So it's not your bin system, it's the curbside pickup, so that we can take that and look at how do we sort that, separate that into the future. That could be, so we can do some more recycling there, separate the timbers and do those sorts of things.
Okay, all right, thanks very much for that. And that's good information. And now I'll speak to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, the uncertainty that's followed the temporary closure has been a matter of concern for a lot of residents. I've taken on board the comments from the community. There's been increased dumping, illegal dumping, and there's an extra burden on those that want to do the right thing to find that they arrive at a facility that's closed, and potentially there's an extra, approximately 40-kilometre round trip for those people. Some people may have driven from the south, and they're going to need to backtrack to go to Woy Woy to do the right thing, dump their stuff. A lot of gardeners have contacted me and suggested that they might need to go to the tip a couple of times, and that extra travel makes it difficult for them. Now, waste facilities traditionally move along in their usage, and it's possible that there is a better alternate usage for the Kincumber Waste Transfer Station. But at the moment, the community is unsure about what's happening. They were surprised, I guess, to see that the facility was temporarily closed. I think a lot of people realised that the opportunity that came out of that was for some maintenance and some improvements, and that's a good thing. But it's just seemed to have moved from a temporary closure that people were happy with. It's morphed into what looks like a permanent closure. So the idea of this facility is to draw out the possible outcomes that follow the temporary closure. If the closure of the facility results in a better services or facility community, I'd support the permanent closure. But if not, I'll fight for the reopening and continuation of this important community facility. I urge councillors to support the motion, and it should bring some information to the community that indicate which direction staff are expecting to take that facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent, did you want to speak a seconder?
I won't speak, Madam Mayor, but I've got a question for Councillor Sudstrom on it. Councillor Sudstrom, is this the site that the junk tastic was operating out of as well, or was that a different site?
Yeah, that's the same site. It's changed considerably since it was Junktastic Park. That's one of the options that people are calling for, whether it's at the Kincumber facility or it's another location. That's why I was hoping that dry stream might have been something that could be associated with a tip shop. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a massively popular facility, and I'd certainly encourage the return of something like that.
Thanks, Councillor Sundstrom. Councillor Vincent.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Sudstrom, would you mind just putting some wording in there or making mention of that in the motion that you'd like in that bring back a comprehensive report, maybe with the options of something similar to Junktastic? Would that be okay?
Yeah, that'll be fine. I guess we could just refer to it as a tip shop.
Tip shop or something like that, yeah, right. I think in point 5 there you've got that. You could probably...
Is there...
Or do you want a separate line on that?
Councillors, we need some wording.
The council requests the CEO to also provide a brief report
on
the future opportunities for a tip shop recycling centre to operate from the Kincumber Waste Transfer Station. Or other appropriate sites in the local, what geographic area would you call that, Councillor Sudstrom?
The heart of the coast.
Good on you. Other sites in the local
ward.
Kincumber area.
I think you've left it quite okay if you take out in the local, just other appropriate sites.
Okay, thank you. I won't say much, but thank you, Councillor Sudstrom, for looking at this. And if people do have to drive too far, then you do get a lot of illegal dumping or inappropriate tipping. As I hear in the north and down through Wyong and the entrance, people in the south there are also raising about their ability to access recycling centres, and what they don't want to see is items that are still good to be used or can be used or save people money to be going into landfill or just trashed. So the bit that I really look forward to here is the tip shop aspect of it. But the rest, thank you for representing your community.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. I have Councillor Holstein.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not wanting to sound like a broken record, again, the first 4 points are just noting something, again, in a notice of motion. The last 2 points are what the actions are. If we're going to be consistent tonight, that's the motion. Parts 5 and part 6 should become 1 and 2, and we move on from them. The other is just background information. In contributing to, if Councillor Sundstrom's prepared just to move with the last 2 points, is I think it'd be interesting, Councillor Sundstrom, or knowledgeable, to get a bit of history in regard with that Chief Executive report on the future opportunities for what was the old Jungtastic Park. You need to know a little bit of history on why it was initially stopped. And I support it. I thought it was a great little initiative, but we need to have a little bit of that history included in there. They're just my comments. I support the motion, but can we just make it precise and also make sure that when we get information back, we get a history of why and what were the issues around the original Jungtastic Park at Kincumber.
Thank you, Councillor Holstein. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm going to speak against, and the reason I'm speaking against is because in the staff response, which I believe was Director Bolgoff, it actually says that from when it was temporarily closed in March 2020 due to COVID outbreak, that there is a review that's been taking place and that we are about to receive a report. It says so the review is anticipated to be completed by September, followed by a report to Council in October 2020. This is what I'm reading in our business paper. So on that ground, knowing that our operational staff are already working on a report with regards to what can happen with this particular facility, I'll be voting against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. Do I have any further speakers? No, it would appear not. Councillor Sundstrom, right, a reply.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thanks for the comments from all the councillors and the support that's there for this. Even Councillor Gale, I know that you're going to vote against this for a reason that not clear to me, but you do support getting the information that this motion calls for. It's a happy coincidence that this motion landed in this business paper, and it's a happy coincidence that the timing of the report that's coming from staff means that we won't be waiting for that report. It was my intention to, as Councillor Vincent suggests, to be the voice of the community in this matter, and the community were unsure about what's going on. And as I said, it's a happy coincidence that the information's going to be forthcoming anyway. And I urge you all just to support the motion. And I take on board that the first few points are not action points, but the majority of motions that we see in this place do have a bit of a preamble nature to them, and it's good to, I think, it's good to get some of that information on the public record. So thanks very much for the support that I hope is going to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sundstrom. Councillors, I'll therefore move the motion put by Councillor Sundstrom, second by Councillor Vincent. All those in favour, please raise your hand. We have Councillor Burke, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Greenaway, Councillor McGregor. Your hand was up, wasn't it? No. Yeah. Councillor Marquette, Councillor Smith, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Hogan, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Vincent, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Gray, all those against? Councillor Gale, the motion is carried. Thank you. Councillors, moving on to our final notice of motion for the evening, 5.6, in the name of McLaughlin, and I believe Councillor Marquette. Am I still correct? Okay, Councillor McLaughlin. Sorry, you're muted.
That sounds fine by me. Yeah.
You're moving it?
Yes, thanks.
Right. And I believe you've got a seconder in Councillor Marquette. Did you want to open debate, Councillor McLaughlin?
Yeah, sure. I'll have a couple of words. Thanks for allowing us to bring this up. This came about basically two people contacted me virtually on the same day asking what do we realise that what COVID's going to do to the coast as far as numbers go for this year with all the travel restrictions, and then another community member said there's nothing on the Central Coast in the TV and advertising. So the question has got to be raised. We did take our tourism budget in-house, and I suppose as councillors, I'd like to know what's happening there in that regard. But I do think we should just get on the front foot. And look, I understand Councillor Holstein's criticism of some of these notions, but you must understand these notions are not just written for us. They're written for the community. They're written for the media, and there is a preamble, exactly as Councillor Sundstrom has said. And I do think you need to get this on public record. You know, we do get criticised for our often grubby, litter-strewn streets. People come up there and say the roadside verges are disgusting, and that's the thing. And often they're not council roads; they're state roads. And we have a litter policy and all that, and then we have every right to write to our state members and say, hey, the entries into the coast are often major roads, and they're not council-owned roads. So that point's made. And I think once again, every year it's always the outcry on litter and bins, and I think we should be on public record to see that this year we may have actually a record year. And what are we doing about it? Are we actually just going to put the same bins out as we've always done, or are we going to be proactive about it and see what the staff have got in mind, bearing in mind that if the restrictions are still in place, and even if they are lifted, there'll be a lot of people hesitant in booking things. I think we'll see a lot of people on the coast this year that will come back and revisit the Central Coast that they haven't done in years past. So that's what the notion's all about, just to get on the front foot, recognising the situation we've got, recognising the opportunity we've got to reinvent us as a destination and get ourselves sorted for this summer. So that's what this motion's all about.
Thank you, Councillor Marquette.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'll support this evening because when your chips are down, when things aren't going real well, like they're not at the moment for a lot of small business, you have to double down on the positives. The Central Coast tourism is a massive positive for us. Where the old slogan, visit the scenic Central Coast. It's a beautiful area. It's the area we all live in and we all love, and we know how positive it can be. But we need to grab this opportunity now. Right now, we have to start working on it. That's why I want to congratulate again Councillor Best and McLaughlin for authoring this one originally, because we have to make sure that we get rubber on the road, we hit the ground running, everything's ready to go. What that looks like, I'm not a tourism expert. Probably nobody sitting in this virtual chamber at the moment is, but we need to find out what the experts are doing, what our staff are doing, and how we capitalise on the opportunity that is going to sit in front of us. I know there will be some people, and I believe it was in the staff report, that might be a little bit worried about, are we attracting extra people to the coast? Are we going to increase our chance of COVID? Well, let's be honest, guys. We heard the same things when it was put in front of us that the Warriors were going to base themselves here. It hasn't happened. It's been really successful. It showcased our area, and I believe the same positive attributes could hit here. I did want to touch again, I know I mentioned it in the previous motion, but when we're talking about the gateways to the coast, a little bit like I said with Tippaborough, I drove through a little town called Burrawa the other week, and they had a big sign up about the superb parrot that's in their area. Like little things like this that I just think we need something. Anything that we can do, I really think that's an important point. Something that can showcase the Central Coast as people drive in. At the moment, you drive into certain areas of the coast and all you see is bollards on the side of the road or the odd sign. I really think we could do better in this space and try and showcase what we're proud of, what makes us coasties, what makes our area a good place to live in. As tourists drive in, they need to get that feel. Oh, this is great, that homely feel. This is what it's all about. Again, I'm certainly no expert in this space, how you would achieve that, but whether it be one hell of a big sign or a big pelican, a big prawn, there's been a lot of big things thrown around. Whatever it may be, I think we need to do something to showcase those gateways. At the moment, I think they're not what they could be. And I'm not just talking about rubbish on the ground. I'm literally talking about something that grabs the eye and says, here I am, I'm back. We want people coming back every year because they love the place. And as they drive past that monument, they drive past that gateway, they take a deep breath and go, I'm back on the coast again. And they come and spend their tourist dollars in our small business, the same small business that's hurting at the moment because of the shutdowns that we've had this year. So I really hope every councillor will put their hand up for this one. And I hope it can be a real positive for tourism on the Central Coast. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marquette. Councillor Holstein, just before I go to you, I just want to let everybody, let everybody know that approximately 3 weeks ago, I put out an invitation to industry experts in relation to summertime 2021 tourism economy strategy. So that meeting's being held on Wednesday, and we have the police, both the local area command, Tony Joyce and Mr. Garrett, he's coming. We have the health minister or the Central Coast Health coming, New South Wales Business Chamber. We also have tourism destination coming along, being represented. We have our media team, John Gralton, thank you, Mr. Murphy. We have our media team and our local Central Coast tourism industry connectors coming along, and that will be a roundtable or a virtual Zoom meeting to discuss the local or the impending tourist season that's coming upon us very quickly in September, and also the Christmas school holidays. What we know is that our accommodation is now booked out for September, and it's fast booking out in December, January. So we know we will have an absolute influx of tourism and people possibly potentially coming up from what has been classified as Sydney hotspots. So what we all need to do, the industry experts, we all need to work together to make sure that we keep our community safe, because that's what that's the message to our community that we've been going with and working towards since March. And we need to keep our, number one, keep our community safe, but also keep our the tourism, our visitors safe. So we are having that meeting on Wednesday. It's already there. So whilst this is a great motion and I will be supporting it, we are already doing it. I guess I just get a little bit offended when we have to put the emotive "a tourism gift or wasted opportunity" as the title, because again, it looks like, you know, we're not doing anything, but we have a great local government area. We're doing great things in this space, COVID or no COVID. Our lakes are looking great. We started dredging today. Our hinterland's looking great. We are really, you know, doing quite well. And when I do speak to businesses, local businesses around the entrance and other areas, absolutely, definitely, they are having a bumper season right now. And being down at the entrance on the weekend, our cafes, our restaurants are just booming with people, and they are having a bumper season at this point. So we want to continue working with our local businesses and supporting them, because that's what we need to do. You're right, we need to continue to work with them, and we have been. And I think I again want to thank the staff for what they have been doing in relation to working with businesses for the outdoor dining, because a lot of the cafes are quite small. So we've been working with outdoor dining, giving some rent relief to that, and we will continue to that. And I look forward to being able to, sooner rather than later, have our art house and the Laycock opened, because that again is another great tourism opportunity. It will be at reduced capacity, but there are things that locals can do throughout the time that they're here, and also our visitors. But we know we have to get this right, because what we don't want is an outbreak, and what we don't want then is to be labelled the Central Coast hotspot. So I'm looking forward to the meeting on Wednesday, and I'm happy to be reporting back to you all as to what was discussed, because it's a bit of a one-in, all-in situation in relation to how we manage the tourists over the upcoming season. And of course, there will be extra soap in the toilets and extra bins, and and security. ensuring that we keep people safe. So, Councillor Holstein.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple of comments, and I do need to clarify to Councillor McLaughlin, please, it's not a criticism, it's about how a motion is formed. And the preamble actually, I think, adds greater confusion to it. It's not saying it shouldn't be there. It would traditionally be in the background information. The motion is about actions. Here we've got recognise, we ensure, we recognise. Oh, we write to the MPs, but we'll then recognise and recognise again. I'm just trying to, if we keep things as simple as possible, and with our notices of motion, all of that other information is background, which can be in there. And as you said, it's to inform public and set the scene. It's not part of the actual motion itself, but I won't go on any more about that. Great to hear about the meeting coming up, Madam Mayor. As Chair of the Tourism Committee, I would have thought maybe I'd had something to contribute to that, but thanks for telling me it's on. I wasn't aware. Councillors, I support the motion, even with all the recognitions and the insurings and all of that, but you do need to be mindful, and I extend an invitation as Chairman of the Tourism Committee to actually come along to any of those meetings and actually see what is happening. The officers have put up a fairly significant report in regard to the things that are happening and the targeting of, in Sydney, of the Have a Little Adventure. It's a 4 million people reach on that little program, which is run from the 15th of the 8th to the 16th of the 10th. We've got the new destination brand Out of Home, which in fact started today and will run through to the 18th of January. We've got information that you would have seen had you been to the Tourist Committee, that we've been on the Today Show with Destination New South Wales, had a 300,000 people reach on that one. We've got articles coming up in Vogue and Vogue Living. We've got upcoming episodes happening with Better Homes and Gardening. They'll be featuring some great Central Coast tourism spots like Pearls of Australia, the Grey Spring Farm, Distillery Botanica. Now, there's something a few councillors need to go to and have a stiff drink. Destination New South Wales has a couple of campaigns coming up, and including providing COVID goes in the right direction. Also one that will be linking in with the Newcastle Airport, which will be early next year. There are lots of things happening, and if I ask the councillors, do you know what TOP is? Half of yous wouldn't know, but have a look. That's about the planning that the council has in regard to our tourism opportunity plan, TOP. You need to look at some of the facts. Talk it up, folks. Don't talk it down. There's lots of things happening out there. By all means, I support the motion. There's probably only one part of it really is going to be relevant, and that is writing to the MPs. But I think what you might wish to include, Councillor McLaughlin, is that the information that the staff have provided in their report to your notice of motion, give a bit of a briefing to the councillors. And I just hope all the councillors come to the briefing, because there is lots of things happening on tourism. There is that thought about how we're going to deal with COVID, and it is great that the Mayor's got a coming together to talk about the issues of how we're going to deal in the COVID times with our tourism, and the message that we're going to be out there. The message has got to be that you're welcome. We expect you to act responsibly and do the right thing, but you need to come up, support our businesses, support our entities here on the coast. Tourism is crucial to us. So I'll support the motion. Please take the comments that I've made in regard to how you put the notices of motion in the intent that they're meant to be. It's about getting it clear and concise, and so we don't.
Councillor Holstein, you've done well.
The time's up.
Time's up. Just a tad. Councillors, there's no more speakers wanting to speak either way. So, Councillor McLaughlin, you can have right to reply.
Thank you, and thank you, Chris, for your input there. I was actually sent you a note saying if you want to amend it, you're welcome, but you've already finished up. So, and we can't do that in right of reply. I think that's the case. But I don't think I need to go on any further there. It's self-explanatory. It's good to hear the background from the Mayor of what's going on. I wasn't aware of that. I don't think any of us were, and I think you know, I think that's great. The public, you know, it's on public record what we are doing, and and as it is, and as what the mayor says, a lot of the traders are having a bumper year because the numbers are up, and I think we just need to be on the front foot for it. So, you know, this motion is simply putting it out there and putting it to the staff to you know, that we expect doing, you know, expect them to do what they're actually doing, and which is good to hear. But anyway, I don't need to speak any further, and I ask you to support it.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. I will now put the motion as moved by Councillor McLaughlin, second by Councillor Marquette. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous, councillors. Thank you. Well, saying that, councillors, members of the public, I'd like to declare the meeting closed. It's 9:34. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for a good meeting, and we look forward to seeing you within the next fortnight. Thank you, everybody. Councillor Gale, did you want to? Sorry, Councillor Gale.
Madam Mayor, I thought we had one more to go, which was the 5.7 Budget Boy Master Plan.
It went through as exception.
Beg your pardon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.